Chapter 336. Hiding merit and fame. Gu Dahu suddenly stopped in his tracks and pulled Madame Chang back. He pressed his lips together and shushed her. Soon, the discussion gradually became clearer. Gu Da's wife must have suffered retribution. Madame Yang must have come back to take revenge on her. Who asked her to be so vicious and evil? Do you think Gu Dai will also suffer retribution? Gu Dai didn't break his sister-in-law's head and push her into the river, right? Otherwise, why was Jia Meizi the only one who got into trouble today? Heh, you don't know about this, right? Another person said mysteriously. Let me tell you. Gu Dai was drunk some time ago and personally said that on the way to Qingan Prefecture, he knocked his niece's head and even snatched a tail of silver. I heard that his niece was already half dead at that time. Do you think she died because he knocked her? Upted on B Omicron X0 VL. C Omicron MO? There's such a thing? That's why I wondered if his niece would seek revenge on Gu Dai. The two of them chatted for a while before suddenly getting up and leaving. Gu Dahu stood where he was, deep in thought. On the other hand, Madame Chang hurriedly walked around to look at the two people who were talking. Unfortunately, she could only see the backs of the two men. They were wearing the clothes of ordinary villagers. She did not know who they were. When she returned, she saw Gu Dahu's eyes shining. He pulled her back to the room and whispered, I have an idea. Do you want to hear it? What is it? Second sister-in-law has harmed eldest sister-in-law. Isn't there a retribution now? Then second brother has harmed Yundong. Shouldn't he pay the price too? Madame Chang was stunned. Gu Dahu cackled. Second brother wanted Yundong's life. Of course, he could not take second brother's life, but second brother's silver. The couple lowered their heads and began to discuss in detail. On the other side, Ah Go and Ah Zhu, who had been hiding, covered their mouths and laughed softly. It's about time. Let's go back today. Sure thing. The two of them left Gu village silently. Because of the Gu village was the combination of two villages, the other village had few people and was poor. After they returned from the wilderness, some houses could not be lived in, so some people moved to the empty houses in Gu village. Therefore, there were always strangers coming in and out of this place, so the two of them were not so conspicuous. The two of them returned to Jiangyu County and entered the inn. In the end, they only saw Ah Mao waiting for them alone. Ah Mao and Ah Shu woke up early to look at the houses in the county city. After all, they could not leave for the time being, and it was inconvenient to stay in the inn all the time. After looking around, they all moved over, leaving only Ah Mao here to bring them to the place. The new courtyard was a little remote. They wouldn't be staying there for long anyway. Ah Go was a little excited when he went in. After sitting down, he could not wait to tell them what had happened in Gu village. That Jia Meizi really thought that she was possessed by a ghost. She was so frightened that her face turned pale. I'm dying of laughter. Actually, Ah Go had indeed knocked her out and moved her to the river with Ah Zhu. They originally wanted to move her to the place where Madame Yang had fallen into the water. There were large rocks there that could block people, and the same place looked more realistic. However, there was someone there. After Ah Go and Ah Zhu discussed, they found another place. At that time, Jia Meizi was tied to a rope, and the other end of the rope was pulled by Ah Zhu, who hid in a tree. Chapter 337. It must be Gu Yundong. Ah Go went into the water and stuck his head out. He grabbed Madame Jia's feet and held them in place. From afar, it was like Madame Jia was standing facing the river, her body leaning forward as if she was about to fall. However, they could not see Ah Go in the water. When they called out to Madame Jia, Ah Go untied the rope on her body and Madame Jia fell into the river. In order not to kill anyone, Go even put her head aside. Then, he swam to the other side and immediately changed his clothes when he got ashore. Fortunately, the weather was gradually getting warmer. Although it was still a little cold, Ah Go felt fearless. Even so, Gu Yundong still made him drink a large bowl of ginger tea to get rid of the cold. Upted on B Omicron X0 VL. C Omicron M. Gu Dahu and his wife should have fallen for it too. Speaking of this, everyone could not help but feel excited. Ah Mao said, we should go to Gu village tomorrow. The next day, Ah Shu went to Gu village with the excuse of settling down. They pretended to be dissatisfied with other places and had no choice but to run back to Gu village. On the other hand, Gu Gang became even more smug and arrogant. Ah Shu said that he wanted to walk around the village first. When Gu Gang saw that there was a chance, he immediately brought him along. They walked to the entrance of old Gus' house. Then, they heard a commotion coming from inside. Father, there was a thief in our house. I don't have any money left in my room. The smile on Gu Gang's face suddenly fell, and he gritted his teeth in anger. Ah Shu looked inside curiously. Gu Da's loud shout had called the whole family over. When Madame Zhao heard that her house had been robbed, she immediately turned around and returned to her room. She looked at her money bag and heaved a sigh of relief. However, her expression immediately turned ugly. She came out and asked him, "You saved money? How much did you save? Was it your wife who urged you?" "Mother, why are you still talking about this at a time like this? Our house has been robbed." "Madame Zhao, robbed? Then why didn't I lose anything in my room?" "I didn't lose anything in my room either. Even the copper coin that mother gave our Bao yesterday is on the table." "It's still there," Madame Chung added. Gu Dai was stunned. What did she mean? Was he the only one who lost money in his room? Gu Dahu suddenly seemed to have thought of something and exclaimed, "Second brother, don't tell me it was also taken by a ghost? It even specially took your silver." "What did you say?" Gu Dai glared at him fiercely. Gu Dahu quickly took a step back. Why is second brother so angry? Could it be that second brother has forgotten that he snatched Yundong's money on the way to escape? "Look, she came back to take revenge on you." Otherwise, while second sister-in-law is still recuperating in her room, who would dare to go in and steal? When everyone heard this, their expressions instantly changed. It would have been fine if Jia Meizi had encountered such a strange thing alone, but now, even Gu Dai had encountered it? Well, Gu Dai felt as if his throat was choked and he could not say a word. Ah Shu, who was outside the door, clicked his tongue. A trace of embarrassment flashed across Gu Gang's face. They're all talking nonsense. There's something wrong with the brains of everyone in old Gus' family. Ah Shu didn't say anything and turned around to go back. When they returned to Gu Gang's house, Gu Gang started to talk about the price again, but Ah Shu did not say a word. The central room was silent for a moment. On the other hand, Mao sauntered out again. When no one was around, he walked to the kitchen. Seeing that MDM Shen was alone, he quickly went in and said, "Miss Shen, my lady asked me to tell you something." Chapter 338, Something happened to old Gu again. MDM Shen looked out. Madame Wang had gone to the toilet and was not back yet. She took a step forward and asked, "What is it?" Ah Mao said, "My lady said that there are many ways to take revenge. If this path doesn't work, well, find another one. However, it's not worth it to sacrifice yourself for revenge." When Madame Shen heard this, she was stunned. Did that Miss Gu guess something? She pursed her lips and looked up to say something, but Ah Mao had already left. Upted on B Omicron X0 VL. C Omicron M. MDM Shen secretly pinched her fingers. Another way? Of course she knew there were other ways, but she didn't want to wait any longer. She would not throw herself in. "Why are you standing at the door? Did you do something wrong? Did you secretly eat something?" "Huh?" Madame Wang's voice suddenly sounded in her ears. Madame Shen was pushed by her and instantly lowered her eyes to hide the disgust in the corners of her eyes. She did not say a word. However, Madame Wang refused to give up. "Why are you acting like this again? All right, there's a piece of meat missing. You must have eaten it secretly. I knew that you're not a good person. I was only gone for a while. Your hands and feet are dirty, right? I was wondering why you spent so much money when you went to the county city to buy things yesterday. Were you the one who kept some of the money? Her cursing continued. Gu Gang finally couldn't help but walk over and slap her. Can you stop? The guests have been scared away. Do you think everyone is as petty and stingy as you? Madame Wang screamed, You hit me again? She pounced on him and scratched him with her nails. MDM Shen silently retreated to a corner and watched them fight to the death. On the other side, Shu had also returned. However, he told Gu Gang that he had to consider it carefully and would come back another day. The next day, Ah Go and Ah Zhu came over. Then, something happened to old Gus family again. It was said that when Madame Jia came out of the outhouse in the morning, she saw the youngest son of the third branch take out a stone from Gu Dahu and his wife's room and plan to throw it away. Then, she recognized that it was the stone that she had dug out from the ground and thrown away. Jia Meizi exploded on the spot. She snatched the stone and beat the child until he almost vomited blood. Hence, the two branches started fighting again. Madame Jia insisted that it was Gu Dahu and his wife who had smashed her head, not Madame Yang's ghost at all. Of course, Gu Dahu and his wife did not admit it. They felt that Madame Jia was deliberately slandering them because the second branch had lost money and wanted to extort a sum from them. Old Gu and Madame Zhao were in a terrible fix. Not to mention stopping the fight, they were even injured. The villagers were all watching the commotion. Only then did they realize that Madame Chang, who looked soft and weak, actually had extraordinary combat strength. She pressed Madame Jia down and beat her up until she cried like a ghost. On the third day, Ah Mao and Ah Shu came again, so something happened to old Gus family again. The two branches of old Gus family wanted to split up, but old Gu refused. Madame Zhao said that they wanted to follow third brother. This was because she knew that her second son and wife were lazy and greedy. Moreover, she had sold Gu Xiener previously. Madame Jia must have a grudge against them. Gu Dai did not want to take care of this couple either, so he agreed readily. However, the condition was that they had to share more of the family assets as compensation for Gu Xiener. Madame Zhao said that she did not have money. When no one was paying attention, Gu Feier secretly ran to the third branch's room to search for silver. He actually found 8 taels of silver. The Gu family was stunned, and Madame Zhao was even more dumbfounded. She had only saved 15 taels of silver for so many years. Chapter 339. The end of the old Gu family. Gu Dai leaned over to take a look and realized that one of the pieces of silver looked very familiar. When he took a closer look, he immediately recognized it. Wasn't this his? He remembered that when he went to exchange for copper coins, the silver fragments were in this shape. At that time, he even joked that the silver fragment was twisted too uniquely, and the two gaps were a little symmetrical. Gu Dai rushed up on the spot and hit Gu Dahu. He scolded him for being a thief and wanted to send him to the officials. He scolded his brother's wife for being a murderer and trying to murder Madame Jia. The two branches started fighting again. This time, even the children were involved. Old Gu shouted at the top of his lungs. No one listened to him at all. Madame Zhao cried even louder. Many things in her house had been smashed. On the fourth day, Ah Go and Ah Zhu came again. Then, something happened to old Gus family again. The 5th day, the 6th day, the 7th day, on the 8th day, old Gus family's two branches had already reached a point where they could not get along. The villagers seemed to be watching the show every day. Gu Gang wanted to interfere, but he realized that Gu Wanbao had been making things difficult for him recently. The two of them had quarreled several times, and he had even said that he did not want to get married. The rumors had even reached the ears of his future in-laws. Gu Gang was already in a terrible fix over his own family's matters, so how could he have the time to pay attention to old Gus family's situation? By the time he came back to his senses, something had already happened to old Gus family. It was said that Jia Meizi had suffered too much during this period of time. It was mainly because they were at a disadvantage every time they fought with the third branch. The third branch's couple were good at secretly scamming people. Others did not expect their martial arts to be so strong. If they fought, the second branch would always lose. Update on B Omicron X0 VL. C Omicron M. That day, when Jia Meizi saw the eldest daughter of the third branch, anger surged. She thought about how her Siener's life was still unknown and how she worked like a slave for others. How could the daughter of the third branch enjoy life at home? At that time, her eyes were bloodshot. She stuffed the 12-year-old girl's mouth and put her into a sack and brought her to the county city. On the way, someone saw that something was wrong with her and noticed that Madame Chang was looking for someone. They roughly guessed it and told Madame Chang. Madame Chang rushed to the county city in a hurry and happened to see Madame Jia planning to sell her daughter to a brothel. Her eyes were about to split open as she went up and started fighting. It was true that Madame Jia could not defeat her, but Madame Chang had to protect her daughter, so she was at a disadvantage. Unexpectedly, Madame Jia took the opportunity to tear off her clothes and expose most of her body in public. Who were the people in the brothel? They were all despicable men. Madame Chang was stunned and her mind went blank. In the end, it was her daughter who escorted her back. After Madame Chang returned, there was something wrong with her and she was in a daze. The doctor said that her brain had been hurt and was afraid that she would be like this in the future. However, Madame Zhao even said that she was embarrassing and wanted Gu Dahu to divorce Madame Chang. Gu Dahu was so angry that his entire body was trembling. He pushed Madame Zhao and almost made her fall. He rushed into the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and ran to the second branch's room. Madame Jia was trembling in fear. Gu Dai naturally went to stop her, and the knife slashed his wrist. The tendons in Gu Da's hand were broken, and his right hand was completely crippled. However, Gu Dahu did not give up. He steeled his heart and cut off the tendons in Gu Da's left hand. Old Gu's house was covered in blood. When old Gu and Madame Zhao rushed in, they saw Gu Dai lying in a pool of blood with a scream. Madame Jia was knocking Gu Dai away. Then, she picked up the knife that he had dropped on the ground and slashed his leg. Old Gu collapsed to the ground. The last thought in his mind was, if I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have sharpened the knife yesterday. Chapter 340. The godlike Gu Yundong. The villagers were shocked by such a huge incident. Madame Chang went crazy. Gu Da's hands were crippled and Gu Dahu broke his leg. Madame Zhao wanted to sink Madame Jia into the pond. When Gu Gang heard this, he almost fainted. By the time he arrived at the Gu residence, the entire courtyard was filled with tragic cries. The villagers hired 2 doctors, but their medical skills were not very good. They could only stop the bleeding and save their lives. As for curing them, that would be too difficult for the doctors. Gu Gang went to look for old Gu. The latter sat weakly in Gu Dahu's room with his back hunched. It was as if a lot of white hair had grown out of his head in an instant. His vitality had been sucked out of him, as if he had aged many years. Madame Zhao was in Gu Da's room. She got someone to grab Madame Jia and shouted at the top of her lungs, "Get rid of her and sink her into the pond." It was all this scourge's fault. All her fault. If it weren't for her, Madame Chang wouldn't have gone crazy, and third son wouldn't have been so angry that he cut off second brother's tendons. In the end, Madame Jia even cut off third brother's legs. Their 2 strong laborers, her 2 sons, were ruined. Destroyed. You're a jinx. Since you married into our family has never lived a good life. Well, sink her into the pond. Her screams could be heard clearly by everyone outside, including old Gu and Gu Gang. Update on B Omicron X0 VL. C Omicron M. Gu Gang frowned and asked him, "What do you think?" Old Gu wiped his face and looked at his third son on the bed, then at Madame Chang, who was sitting at the head of the bed in a daze. In the end, he thought of his second son who was also lying down and sighed heavily. Karma. It's all karma. As he spoke, he got up and bent down to go to the second branch's room. He said to Madame Zhao, whose eyes were still fierce, "Let second daughter-in-law stay." Madame Zhao turned to look at him in disbelief. Old Gu said, second brother is already like this. Someone has to take care of him. I can take care of him. What about third son? Madame Zhao opened her mouth. Thinking of Madame Chang's appearance, she probably could not rely on her. She could only do it herself. Old Gu continued, besides, if you sink her into the pond, who will do all the work in our family? Or are you going to arrange another wife for second brother? But our family spent most of our money on the treatment just now. Besides, look at second son. No one is willing to marry him again. But, old Gu said in a low voice, at most, you can just torture her in the future. Let this matter go. Don't make a fuss. Our family is already like this, what are you still making a fuss for? Let's not talk about anything else. For the sake of your eldest grandson, you can't sink her into the pond. Otherwise, what if your eldest grandson wants to get married in the future? After Madame Zhao heard this, she looked at MDM Jia with a vicious gaze. Madame Jia was also afraid now. At that time, she was just hot-headed. She did not expect things to develop to this extent. Now, as long as they did not let her sink into the pond, she would do anything. Now that things had come to this, old Gus' words made sense. In addition, his eldest grandson was still pleading on the side. Madame Zhao could only give in. However, Madame Jia's life would be difficult in the future. Therefore, old Gus' family has suffered heavy losses this time. When Ah Go and the others reported the situation to Gu Yundong, they were extremely excited. Miss Gus' foresight was godlike. She was too smart. Look at how she had tormented old Gus' family. Gu Yundong knew that old Gus' family would not have a good ending. After all, she knew the weaknesses of that family too well. They were all selfish. What she cared more about now was, what about Miss Shen? Chapter 341, You Adulterous Couple. At the mention of the Shen family, Shu and Ah Mao looked at each other. Of course, they already knew how Madame Shen planned to deal with Gu Gang. Although they felt that it was not worth it, there was nothing they could do since Madame Shen insisted on doing so. Ah Shu said, Miss Shen asked me to help her tomorrow. She should be preparing to reel in the net. Gu Yundong nodded. Go there early tomorrow. The next day, Ah Shu went to Gu village again. Recently, Gu Gang had been very frustrated. Gu village was not peaceful because so many things had happened to old Gus' family. Ah Shu, whom he had always thought could extort more money from, always said that he would consider whether or not to settle down here. Every time he thought there was hope, something would happen to old Gus' family. Then, Shu would go back. This dragged on day after day. Therefore, Gu Gang really hated old Gus' family to the core. He was considering whether he should chase this useless family out of Gu village. However, he had lost his patience with Ah Shu. This time, when he heard that Ah Shu was coming, he was also disinterested. It was only when Ah Shu's cousin came over and said that Ah Shu wanted to see the homestead that he suddenly came back to his senses. Had this guy made up his mind? Gu Gang immediately tidied himself up and left. Ah Shu was standing not far from his distant cousin's house. He pointed at a place and said that he wanted to buy 1 acre. Gu Gang still stated the previous price, and there was no room for negotiation. Although Ah Shu was unhappy, he still agreed. Unexpectedly, Gu Gang pushed his luck and asked for 5 taels of silver as he had to bribe the officials. When Ah Shu heard this, he exploded and started arguing with him on the spot. He said that Gu Gang was a blood-sucking bug, that he was black-hearted, and his words were very intense. It provoked Gu Gang so much that he almost fainted. He pointed at Ah Shu and told him to get lost. He didn't have to come again. Then, he went home angrily. There was no one at home. Gu Gang was so angry that his throat was smoking. He wanted to go to the kitchen to drink water. Unexpectedly, he heard strange rustling sounds. Among them was his concubine Madame Shen's. There was something wrong with that sound. Gu Gang followed the sound and saw that the door to his room was ajar. He could hear laughter coming from inside. He only heard a few words before his anger surged. He suddenly pushed open the door. What greeted his eyes were two people in disheveled clothes hugging each other. One of them was Gu Wanbao, his good grandson. The other was Madame Shen, his beloved concubine. What a match made in heaven. Gu Gang pointed at them with a trembling finger. You adulterous couple, you actually did such a thing, you did such a thing. Slowly, even his body began to tremble. He turned around to look for something, as if he wanted to beat them to death. Seeing that there was a wooden stick beside the door frame, Gu Gang took it. Madame Shen screamed in fear and hurriedly hid behind Gu Wanbao. She said pitifully and dependently, "What should I do? Wanbao, save me. Hell, kill me. What should I do? I'm so scared." Initially, Gu Wanbao was still a little timid. However, he had been quarreling with Gu Gang recently, so his courage slowly grew. Coupled with Madame Shen's stimulation, he immediately puffed out his chest and stood in front of her. "Who are you calling an adulterous couple? You're clearly the one who's so old and still doesn't know shame. I was the one who saved her in the first place, and I was the one who wanted to marry her. If you hadn't ruined her, we would have been a perfect couple. You old man, you already have my grandmother, yet you still fancy a young lady. She's young enough to be your granddaughter." Chapter 342, Escaped. You. Gu Gang raised his hand that was holding the wooden stick high, but he could not smash it no matter what. He felt that his hand was out of control, and a bad feeling welled up in his heart. Gradually, his pupils enlarged, and Gu Gang made a difficult hee-hee sound. He walked towards Gu Wanbao step by step, his eyes bloodshot as if he wanted to say something. However, in Gu Wanbao's eyes, it was obvious that he wanted to kill him. However, Madame Shen saw that something was wrong before him. She tugged at Gu Wanbao's sleeve. "Is he going to beat us to death? Let's run." Gu Wanbao pulled him away. Gu Gang was a little anxious. He moved his other hand and seemed to be able to control it. He immediately grabbed Gu Wanbao, who was walking past him. Gu Wanbao's expression changed. In his panic, he grabbed the scissors in the embroidered basket and stabbed them at him. Bright red blood spurted out, dyeing Gu Wanbao's hands and his clothes red. Gu Gang lowered his head in disbelief and looked at the scissors stuck in his chest. Gu Wanbao was also shocked. He lowered his head and looked at his hands. He had killed someone. He killed his own grandfather. Gu Wanbao suddenly took 2 steps back. He looked at Madame Shen, who also looked at him with wide eyes. You have to pay with your life for killing someone," she said with difficulty. Gu Wanbao's face turned pale. He shook his head. "No, I didn't do it on purpose. I don't want to pay with my life. I don't want to die. I don't want." He turned around and ran out in a panic. Madame Shen was still standing on the spot. She looked at Gu Gang, who was panting heavily on the ground, and suddenly laughed. Mao's head appeared at the door and waved at her. "Let's go." Madame Shen cleaned up the traces on the bed and followed Mao over the wall, temporarily leaving the Gu residence. At this moment, Gu Wanbao did not expect to bump into Shu and his cousin the moment he ran out of the door. Shu saw the blood on Gu Wanbao's hand at a glance, and so did his cousin. They both looked at him in shock. Gu Wanbao shook his head violently. I didn't, as he spoke, he ran away quickly and disappeared in an instant. Before Shu could say anything, his cousin shouted, "Oh no, something must have happened." She ran into the house first and searched around. In the end, she found the person lying on the ground in Gu Gang's main room, covered in blood. Screams instantly resounded throughout the entire Gu family. Not long after, people arrived one after another. Madame Shen also came in with a basket. When she saw that her house was surrounded by people, she asked in surprise, "What's wrong? Why are they all gathered at our door?" When someone saw her coming over, he immediately said, "Oh, you're back. Something happened at your house. Your man was stabbed by his grandson. Blood is everywhere." What? MDM Shen's basket fell to the ground and she ran in without saying anything. Gu Gang's bed was filled with people. Among them, Madame Wang cried the most sadly. Madame Yu, on the other hand, muttered to herself. She looked at Ah Shu's cousin one moment and shouted the next, impossible. My Wanbao didn't do it. He didn't do it. The cousin took 2 steps back. I'm not the only one who saw it. Ah Shu saw it too. His hands were covered in blood when he ran out. He was in a panic. I think we weren't the only ones who saw him when he ran away. There were others on the way. Why don't you ask? I don't believe it. I don't believe anyone until Wanbao is found. Chapter 343, A Stroke, Then Go and Find Him. Madame Yu suddenly came back to her senses. Yes, I'll go look for my Wanbao. I'll get him back. After she ran out, MDM Shen took a few steps forward and asked the doctor, how's our master? Fortunately, his vitals weren't stabbed. He just lost a lot of blood. However, he suffered a huge shock and fell ill. He had a stroke. He has to be taken good care of in the future. The doctor shook his head and sighed. A stroke? Everyone was stunned. Madame Wang stopped crying. She lowered her head and looked at Gu Gang, who could not even speak. She was a little stunned. How could this be? How could he have a stroke? What would they do in the future? When the villagers heard this news, they were inexplicably happy. Although Gu Gang was the chief of Gu village, while most chiefs were doing it for the benefit of the family, only Gu Gang was focused on his family's money and even sucked blood from his clansmen, which had long caused everyone to be dissatisfied. Unfortunately, the position of the patriarch was not so easy to shake. At that time, most of the elders were on Gu Gang's side. After all, there were benefits to be gained. Fortunately, when they fled, a few elders did not survive. Gu Gang's influence weakened immediately, and after he returned, he gradually lost his power in Gu village. Therefore, even Gu Gang's appearance did not work when old Gus's family was in trouble. Now that he was paralyzed, it was simply a joyous occasion. The news spread quickly. Not long after, many people came to their house one after another. Among them was a middle-aged man who had gradually gained prestige in the village. This person was ambitious. He was from the neighboring village. When they escaped from the famine, most of the people in his village were mobilized together. This person was the leader. After returning, the 2 villages merged. He knew that the chief of Gu village was not a good person and had always wanted to pull him down. The villagers from his previous village all supported him. As for the people of Gu village, they were like a pot of loose sand now, without any cohesion. With the excuse that Gu Gang was not qualified to be the chief of Gu village, he told the town about the matter and then reported it to the county. After that, the head of Gu village changed hands. In just one day, so fast that Gu Gang's family did not even have time to react, their family had gone from the high and mighty village chief's family to one that no one liked. When the new village chief heard about Gu Gang's case, he reported the suspect, Gu Wanbao, to the police. The police was also searching for Gu Wanbao. Madame Yu went out to look for her son for a day, but she couldn't find him. When she returned, she realized that the sky had changed. The entire Gu family was filled with a gloomy atmosphere. Only MDM Shen slept soundly. Gu Yundong was quite satisfied with this result. As long as MDM Shen felt that it was fine, she would naturally be fine. About 10 days had passed since the start of her plans for Gu village. The Gu family was finished, and so was Gu Gang. Gu Yundong thought that it was time to go back and meet her younger siblings. She was already starting to miss them. Her mother was playing with the puzzle over and over again, almost to the point of erasing the patterns on the puzzle. However, before leaving, she still asked Bian Yuanji, "We will be leaving here in 2 days. Is there anywhere you want to go?" She thought that after leaving this time, they might not have a chance to come back again. She asked him if there was anywhere he wanted to go and would bring him there before they left. Bian Yuanji was stunned. He lowered his head and replied after a while, yes. Chapter 344, Meeting Madame Hu. Again Bian Yuanji wanted to take a look at his home. Ever since he came back from the desert, he stayed in the Ding family for a few days before being sent to the Gu family. Until now, he had never returned to the warm home where his parents and sister used to live. Gu Yundong immediately agreed. She also wanted to take a look. The Bian family was a little far away. After leaving the county city, they had to pass by Gu village and the Ding family's Shangbei village. After passing another village, they arrived at his house. Her eldest uncle Bian Han's parents had passed away a few years ago. His family had never had many children. Bian Yuanzi's only close relative was Bian Han's sister, who had long been married off. Unfortunately, he did not return after escaping. Guaxia village was not big and was poorer than Gu village and Shangbei village. After the disaster, it was even poorer and there were not many people left in the village. When they saw Gu Yundong and the rest, they looked over curiously. It was only when they saw them going to the Bian family that they suddenly remembered. Wasn't he the child from the Bian family? The Bian family had long been in shambles. When they left previously, they had taken everything they could. Those that could not be taken away had probably been plundered long ago. However, looking at the familiar room and environment, Bian Yuanji was still very happy. After the joy, her heart ached. Her sister was gone and she would never come back. She did not know where her parents were or if they were still alive. Gu Yundong looked around and realized that there were some wood carvings in the corner. These were all made by her uncle. Eldest uncle used to be a carpenter. Unfortunately, he had only learned it for a short period of time, so he could only make some trinkets for a living. Gu Yundong took a piece of cloth from the carriage and laid it on the ground. She placed the small wooden carvings on it. Seeing this, Bian Yuanji also ran over to help. Now that he could eat and wear warm clothes, he felt much stronger. After packing the small wooden carvings, he carried them on his back. Unexpectedly, as soon as he stepped out of the door, he saw a few people surrounding him. A young-looking woman asked him, "Yuanji, is it you?" Bian Yuanji still remembered this person. She was the aunt next door. He immediately put down his things. "Aunt Li, it's me. I heard that you went to your grandpa's house. Why are you back?" The two villages were far apart, so Auntie Li really didn't know what kind of life he was living. Although she knew that his family and his grandfather's family did not have a good relationship, she did not expect it to be so bad. Bian Yuanji looked at Gu Yundong, then turned around and said, "I'm not at my grandpa's house anymore. I'm out. Auntie Li, I'm leaving. I might not come back in the future." Aunt Li was stunned. She looked at him, then at Gu Yundong and MDM Yang. She did not ask further. She just sighed and said, "No matter what, it's good to be alive. It's not easy to have a full meal these days. You're a good child. Take good care of yourself." Based on Bian Yuanzi's current attire, he seemed to be doing well. He should be living a good life. Bian Yuanji nodded at Aunt Li with a smile. He now had a cousin and his aunt, Shu and Kiki. He was very good. Picking up the cloth bag on the ground, Bian Yuanji walked towards the carriage. Unexpectedly, halfway there, he suddenly saw someone walking over. As soon as Bian Yuanji saw that person, he recalled a bad memory. He turned around and ran towards Gu Yundong, holding her hand nervously. Only then did Gu Yundong look up at Madame Hu was walking over. Madame Hu was also surprised. She looked at Bian Yuanji and was speechless for a long time. Chapter 345, A Little Familiar upped by Boxn0VL. C. Omicron M. Madame Hu called out to him tentatively, "Yuanji?" She couldn't be blamed for not being sure. It was mainly because Bian Yuanji was too different from what she had seen before. Who would have thought that in just 10 days, this person would become a completely different person? It seemed that he had indeed lived a good life. Madame Hu felt a little jealous. When Ding Jinsheng came back that day, she panicked when she didn't see Bian Yuanji. She thought that Ding Jincheng had really sold him after getting him back from old Gus family. Wasn't he just out of the tiger's den and into the wolf's den? Wouldn't Bian Mulan look for him in the middle of the night? At that time, Madame Hu cried and asked Ding Jincheng to bring him back. Unexpectedly, Ding Jincheng said, "Didn't you dislike him? Then wouldn't it be good if I sent him to a family who wanted to adopt him?" Madame Hu almost went crazy with anger. "I don't like him, but what can I do? What if his sister comes to me in the middle of the night to take my life? Mother, Mulan just doesn't want Yuanji to suffer. Think about it, did she only ask you to let us take him away from the old Gu family?" Madame Hu actually didn't dare to recall the situation at that time. It was Father Ding who nodded and confirmed that Bian Mulan had indeed said that. However, Madame Hu was still afraid. Ding Jincheng advised her, "That family is quite good and well off. Yuanji doesn't have to worry about food and clothing. It's much better than in our family. If Mulan finds out, not only will she not blame us, she will even thank us." Madame Hu was skeptical. Although it made sense, she still didn't dare to sleep that night. She waited all night with dark circles under her eyes and heaved a sigh of relief when she didn't see Bian Mulan and the black and white ghosts again. She fell onto the bed and slept for an entire day and night. When she woke up the next day, she heard that something had happened to old Gus family and that it was haunted. Jia Meizi had also been hit on the head and fell into the water, just like Madame Yang back then. At that time, she felt that Bian Mulan was taking revenge on old Gus family and was secretly happy. She secretly thought that the woman deserved it and started to laugh at her. However, something had been happening to old Gus family. In just 10 days, they had actually reached the point of killing each other and breaking their limbs. Madame Hu was a little afraid. She felt that Mulan seemed to be a little ruthless and especially vengeful. She was afraid that after Mulan finished dealing with old Gus family, she would remember what Madame Hu had done wrong and look for her again. Therefore, Madame Hu set up a memorial tablet for Bian Mulan at home and burned a lot of paper money. In the end, she still felt uneasy. She actually dreamed of Bian Mulan's family in the middle of the night. She shivered and came to the Bian family the next day. She wanted to clean the house for the Bian family so that Bian Mulan could stay at her maternal home if she had nothing to do and wouldn't scare them again. He didn't expect to see Bian Yuanji here. Bian Yuanji still looked like he was living a good life. Madame Hu shifted her complicated gaze away from him and looked at Gu Yundong. Then, she was stunned. This woman looked a little familiar. "Miss, have we met before?" Gu Yundong did not like Madame Hu. Initially, she did not want to talk to her. Unexpectedly, Madame Hu remembered it herself. "By the way, it's at Xingxing restaurant, right? You asked my Jincheng about something, right?" Gu Yundong was a little surprised. He did not expect Madame Hu to have such a good memory at her age. Madame Hu was a little jealous. Her Jincheng knew such a rich family first, but she didn't expect Bian Yuanji to take advantage in the end. Gu Yundong nodded slightly and said to Bian Yuanji, "Let's go." "Yeah." Madame Yang also held Bian Yuanji's hand and said, "Don't be afraid. Dong Dong will protect you." Madame Hu was stunned. Why did this person's words sound? Chapter 346, That's Gu Dajiang's wife upped by Boxn0VL. C. Omicron M. Madame Hu watched as the three of them got into the carriage, but her brows furrowed slightly. It was only when their carriage disappeared into the distance that she came back to her senses. She strode towards Auntie Li's house and asked her, "Hey, do you know who the person with Yuanji is?" Auntie Li shook her head. "How would I know?" She didn't really want to bother with Madame Hu. Besides, she really didn't know. She had only said a few words to Yuanji. That girl looked very noble. How could a poor family like hers dare to look at the girl? Seeing that she could not find out anything, Madame Hu was a little angry. At this moment, she could not be bothered to go to the Bian house. She turned around and ran home. When she saw Ding Jincheng chopping firewood, she hurriedly pulled him over and asked him very seriously, "Tell me honestly, Who exactly is the person who adopted Bian Yuanji? Ding Jincheng was taken aback, and his gaze drifted a little. Didn't I say it already? It's just a kind-hearted family who pitted Yuanji. Don't lie to me. Madame Hu suddenly shook off his hand and said angrily, I met them all today. Not only did I meet Bian Yuanji, but I also met Gu Dajiang's wife. Yes, the woman who spoke like a child was Gu Dajiang's wife. Of course, she recognized Madame Yang. It was just that the Madame Yang she saw today was too different from before. Not only had she gained weight, but her face had also become better and her clothes were neat. She didn't dare to look at her anymore. It was only when she heard Madame Yang's words that she suddenly connected the two of them. However, Madame Hu could not believe it no matter what. Still, along the way, she was certain that it was Madame Yang. Who was the woman holding Bian Yuanzi's hand? Ding Jincheng saw that his mother had seen them, so he did not hide it anymore. He pursed his lips and said, that person is Yuanzi's cousin. Cousin? She's eldest uncle Gu Dajiang's daughter. Pest, Madame Hu's eyes widened. Gu Dajiang's daughter. Madame Yang's daughter? No wonder Madame Yang was also there. She frowned tightly. Gu Dajiang's daughter was back, and she looked rich. She returned to Jiangyu County, but she didn't show up. She didn't go back to Gu Village, but only asked you to bring Bian Yuanji out? Ding Jincheng nodded. Yes, she knew that Bian Yuanji wasn't doing well. The Gu family didn't like him, so she took him away. She doesn't live in Jiangyu County? Ding Jincheng still nodded. Madame Hu lowered her head and thought for a moment. Suddenly, she clapped her hands and smiled. Then, she turned around and left. A bad premonition flashed across Ding Jincheng's mind. He suddenly pulled her back. Mother, where are you going? Where am I going? Ha 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 ha, they'll go to old Gus' house. Madame Hu gloated. They extorted a tael of silver from me and tortured me. Do you see that? Old Gus' eldest granddaughter is so promising now. She clearly came back, but she doesn't even enter the house. Ha ha ha, isn't that hilarious? Mother, hey, don't stop me. If old Gu finds out, he'll definitely regret it and die. I have to tell them that their rich granddaughter came back and took Bian Yuanji away without even looking at them. Ha ha ha. I want to laugh when I think of old Gus' face when he hears that. Madame Hu was extremely excited. She just wanted to see the world in chaos. She struggled free from Ding Jincheng and wanted to leave. Chapter 347, I'm Not Scaring You. TED by BXN0VL. C Omicron M. However, when Ding Jincheng heard her words, he broke out in cold sweat. He hugged her and dragged her back. Mother, don't go. Not only did he drag Madame Hu back to the house, but he also locked the door. Madame Hu was furious and pinched his hand desperately. Why are you stopping me? Mother. Ding Jincheng pressed her down on the chair and said with a serious expression, if you want me to lose my limbs, go ahead. Madame Hu, who was about to hit him, paused and looked at him in surprise. What do you mean? Mother, have you forgotten what happened to old Gus' family recently? Ding Jincheng took a deep breath and lowered his voice. I suspect that the eldest daughter of the Gu family is behind old Gus' family's matters. Huh? Madame Hu's eyes widened, as if she didn't believe it. Her? How is it possible for a girl who didn't even dare to speak loudly in the past to do that? I'm not scaring you, Ding Jincheng said. In the past, she didn't dare to speak loudly, but now she does. Don't forget that at Xingxing restaurant that day, other than her, there was a man who looked powerful and influential. Now that the eldest daughter of the Gu family has a backer, she's more confident. The last time she saw me, her gaze was so terrifying that I was afraid of her. Madame Hu was stunned. There did seem to be a man. She thought of the Gu Yundong she had seen today. Her gaze was indeed a little scary. She slowly calmed down, but she still couldn't believe it. But didn't the second and third branches of old Gus' family fight between themselves? That's why I find it scary. Ding Jinsheng did not expect them to be involved, but the last time he passed by Gu village and saw Go, he found it strange. Bian Yuanji had already been sent back, so why would this person who had been with Gu Yundong appear? When he heard that something had happened to old Gus' family and that it was very tragic, he could not help but shiver. He did not even dare to go to the county city during this period of time. Mother, think about it. Why didn't anything happen to old Gus' family earlier or later? Why did something happen as soon as Yuanji left? Why did Gu Yundong stay in Jiangyu County even though she had already rescued Bian Yuanji? Why did old Gus' family get into trouble, and even Patriarch Gu became like that? These people all have a grudge against Gu Dajiang. As Ding Jinsheng spoke, he couldn't help but swallow his saliva. I suspect that the Gu girl came back this time to take revenge. Gu Dajiang must have died. Perhaps his death is related to old Gus' family, so when she becomes capable, she comes to find trouble with old Gus' family. The man she followed is obviously powerful. Mother, let's not get involved with them. Otherwise, we won't have a good life either. He had been thinking a lot these past few days. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this was the case. He even suspected that his parents' encounter with a ghost had something to do with her. Madame Hu was stunned when she heard this. However, when Ding Jinsheng said that, his tone was scary, making one's hair stand on end. She glared at him. Then I won't go. Don't go. Madame Hu wanted to laugh at old Gus' family, but when she thought of the miserable state of old Gus' family, she decided to forget it. What if this woman realized that they were bad to Bian Mulan and Bian Yuanji? Gu Yundong did not know that Madame Hu had almost gone to Gu village to announce her return, but it did not matter even if she did. The Gu family was already in such a state. So what if they knew that she was the one who did it? Chapter 348, Preparing to Bid Farewell You. TED by BXN0VL. See Omicron M. Now that the matters here were almost resolved, since his father was not here, Gu Yundong was prepared to go back. She gave the owner of Xingxing restaurant more than 10 caddies of white sugar and asked him to pay more attention to Gu village. If Gu Dajiang or his aunt and uncle returned, he would tell them that she was safe and that she and the family were at the Xuanhe prefecture. Gu Yundong had left him the address of Aunt Kes' house in the prefectural city of the Xuanhe prefecture. This was to prevent old Gus' family from running to Yongfu village to cause trouble when they heard the news. Secondly, there were many people going to the prefecture capital, so it would be easier to find Aunt Kes' house. Originally, she had wanted to leave Nye Tsong's address. After all, Aunt Ku was now staying in Yongfu village. If she liked that place, Gu Yundong also wanted her to continue staying there. Otherwise, it would be too difficult for her to live alone. However, Nye Tsong's family was wealthy. If her father and the rest went over, they might not be able to see Nye Kong. It was better to leave Aunt Kes' address. When the time came, she would have to trouble the neighbors to keep an eye out. The owner of Xingxing restaurant liked white sugar very much and had a good relationship with Gu Dajiang. He agreed without hesitation. When everything was settled, Gu Yundong began to pack her luggage and clothes. She had not stayed here for long, so she did not have many things. However, he bought a lot of trinkets for Madame Yang and Bian Yuanji as a memento. Just as she was packing her luggage, there was a knock on the door. Ah Mao's voice came from outside the door. My lady, Miss Shen is here. Gu Yundong was stunned. She opened the door and saw MDM Shen standing outside. She was dressed in dark green clothes and looked a little haggard. When she saw Gu Yundong, her smile was very gentle. Gu Yundong glanced at the bag on her back and was a little surprised. What are you? I'm here to bid you farewell. Gu Yundong let her in and poured her a glass of water. Farewell? Where are you going? Will old Gus' family let you go? It was early in the morning and still a little cold outside. MDM Shen took a sip of hot water and felt much warmer. She smiled. So what if they won't let me go? Gu Gang could not even speak. He stared and drooled all day. Madame Wang wanted to detain her as a slave. Now that Gu Gang was no longer supporting her, Madame Wang wanted to bully her to death, but she was no longer obedient. As for Madame Yu and her husband, they were still trying their best to find out where Gu Wanbao was. Didn't Madame Yu use such a despicable method to send her to Gu Gang's bed because she was afraid that Madame Shen would pester Gu Wanbao? Now, Madame Shen would let her have a taste of losing her son. MDM Shen was overjoyed and her smile became brighter. Back then, when Gu Gang wanted to take me in as his concubine, I lied and said that I had lost my household registration certificate. In fact, I had been hiding it all along. When Gu Gang wanted to go to the government office to get me a new one, I thought of a way to delay it until now. Although I'm his concubine on the surface, I'm still a good citizen. Even if I escape, they can't do anything to me. Although the refugees had been back to their hometown for some time, because the two villages had merged, many household registrations were still unclear, so she was not an exception. Gu Yundong admired her. Then where do you plan to go? I'll just go home. MDM Shen sighed faintly. I remember you saying that your home is in a town on the other side of Feng County, right? Feng County is not close to here. It could even be said that it was far away. After leaving Jiangyu County, they had to pass through the Yongning Prefecture. Why don't you wait for another day? We'll give you a ride. We have to pass by anyway. Chapter 349, A Favor You. TED by BXN0VL. C. Omicron MMDM Shen was stunned for a moment before she lowered her eyes and thought about it. To be honest, she was indeed a little worried about traveling alone. Originally, she had planned to look for a caravan after bidding farewell to Gu Yundong and see if she could hitch a ride. It would be great if she could be with Gu Yundong. Hence, she nodded and agreed. Thank you. Then I'll take you to your room to rest. We'll leave early tomorrow morning. Yeah. Gu Yundong brought her to the room next door. That room was empty and just needed to be tidied up. When MDM Shen was working, Gu Yundong went out. Unexpectedly, as soon as she walked out of the courtyard, she saw Mao and the other three pushing each other towards her. Gu Yundong stopped in her tracks and glanced at them. The four of them immediately straightened their backs. However, their eyes did not stop rolling for a moment. Anyone could tell that they wanted to say something but hesitated. Gu Yundong entered the central room and said, "Do you have anything to say to me?" The four of them quickly walked in and looked at each other. After a while, Mao, who was the boss, said, Miss, we want to beg me for something." Beg me for something? Gu Yundong was surprised. Why did it sound so serious? She couldn't help but sit up straight. Go ahead. Well, miss, can you bring us back to the Shuanhe prefecture? Gu Yundong could not help but be stunned. She blurted out, Brother Xiao didn't say that he wanted to take you away. Brother Xiao? Xiao Qingyuan, who had just stepped through the door, suddenly stopped in his tracks. This was the first time he had heard her call him Brother Xiao. Why did it sound so nice? Xiao Qingyuan couldn't help but smile. He tried his best not to laugh out loud. He cleared his throat and strode into the central room. Gu Yundong turned her head and saw him. She looked at the spring breeze on his face in confusion. What happened? Why was he so happy? Xiao Qingyuan silently walked to a chair at the side and sat down. He picked up his teacup and drank his tea quietly. Continue chatting. He pretended that he didn't exist. She could continue to call him Brother Xiao. Gu Yundong felt that there was something strange about him. They were talking about him and he was present. How could they continue chatting? However, Mao could still continue. He said, Young Master Xiao said that it's up to you whether we stay or leave. Xiao Qingyuan nodded slightly. Gu Yundong was speechless. Didn't you bring them from the prefectural city? He had already ordered them around for so many days. Had he not decided if he wanted to take them away? Gu Yundong could not help but rub her forehead. He pointed outside and said, Go pack your things. Buy everything you need. If you need money, ask Xiao Qingyuan. All right. The four of them immediately cheered up and skipped out of the door. Xiao Qingyuan was a little disappointed. Why did she call his name again? Mao quickly poked his head in. Young Master Xiao Qingyuan could only stand up and leave expressionlessly. Gu Yundong looked at his back and was puzzled. Why did it feel like he was a little disappointed? Could it be that he did not want to bring Mao and the other three along? No way. Didn't he say that Mao and the others were very smart? If they were nurtured well, they would be his right-hand men in the future? Moreover, they had already done bad things together. It was not good to leave them behind. Gu Yundong shook her head and returned to her room to continue packing. The next morning, the group loaded the items into 2 carriages, checked out of the inn, and set off for the city gate. Chapter 350, Follow-up of Gu Village U. TED by BXN0VL. See Omicron M sitting in the carriage. Bian Yuanji looked very happy. He would be able to see Shu and the others soon. Although he had yet to find his parents, his cousin was right. As long as he lived well, he would definitely be able to see them. MDM Shen was also sitting in the carriage. As she watched this place that had given her a painful experience get further and further away, her mood was unprecedentedly calm. Unfortunately, Gu Village was not peaceful at all. After Madame Wang found out that she had disappeared, she started to shout everywhere that she had eloped with someone and wanted to find her and drown her in the pond. It was a pity that Gu Gang was no longer the village chief. At most, he was only the patriarch of the Gu family in name. However, it was likely that he would not even be the patriarch soon. As the new chief of Gu Village, he did not react to Madame Wang's words at all. He even heard from the family living next door to old Gus family that Madame Wang had tortured Madame Shen until she ran away, so he reprimanded Madame Wang fiercely. Only then did Madame Wang realize that her family really had no status in the village anymore. They were the kind that anyone could step on. She hated it to death, but who could she blame? In the end, no matter how she thought about it, it was all because of Gu Gang, who had to take a concubine despite being so old. Therefore, when she was taking care of Gu Gang, she became extremely impatient. Not only did she curse, but she also often starved him and kept him cold. Not long after, he became so thin that he was only skin and bones. He did not have any energy left. His son and daughter-in-law didn't care about him at all. They didn't even have enough time to look for Gu Wanbao, let alone care about such a useless person. However, Gu Gang's vitality was still very tenacious. He could not die, so he could only suffer. The Gu family, which was not far away from them, was not doing well either. The brothers had lost their arms or leg. Now, he could not do any work and had to lie in bed every day to be served. To the two of them, what was the difference between them and trash? In the beginning, the two of them would still scold each other. Later on, when they ran out of strength, they would lie on the bed in a daze. Their willpower was especially low. Occasionally, when their temper flared up, they would scold their children. After scolding their children, they would scold their wives. After scolding their wives, they would start scolding their parents. Not only had their families been tortured, but they had also destroyed many things. The old Gu family, who had spent almost all their money to treat their injuries, was now extremely poor. The children of old Gus family's 2 branches, who had been slacking off whenever they could, had no choice but to work now. The younger ones had to go to pick pig grass and firewood. Every day, they would come back and look at their swollen fingers with teary eyes. It was only then that they realized what kind of life Gu Yundong and her siblings had led in the past. There was regret and hatred. Why didn't Gu Yundong and her siblings come back? If they were here, they would be the ones doing the work. Jia Meizi was so tired that she couldn't even straighten her back every day. In the past, she was the laziest and most greedy sister-in-law, but now, she couldn't sleep or eat her fill every day. In the day, she had to wash clothes, cook, and go to the fields. In the middle of the night, she had to take care of Gu Dai. Sometimes, when Gu Da's temper flared up, he would hit her. He blamed her for selling the third branch's child and implicating him, causing him to become a cripple. Jia Maisie didn't dare to retort. She had gone back to her maternal family, but what did they say? Maisie, your reputation is ruined now. Everyone in our village knows that you wanted to harm your sister-in-law and even cut off your third uncle's leg. Now, it has already implicated your niece's marriage. If you're divorced, our Jia family will treat it as if we don't have a daughter like you. Chapter 351, The Gu Family's Granddaughter Returned You. TED by BXN0VL. C-M Jia Maisie could only continue to stay in old Gus' house. She was ordered around by Madame Zhao and scolded by Gu Dai. However, her children did not understand her and pushed all the blame to her. Madame Chang was still in a daze. She did not go out at all and rarely even left her room. Not only was she unable to take care of Gu Dahu, she even needed her daughter to take care of her. Madame Zhao was furious and deliberately starved her a few times. Madame Chang was so hungry that she couldn't take it anymore and came out, but she directly smashed the door of the main house to find food and almost fought with Madame Zhao. Madame Zhao almost fainted. She was also busy. Madame Chang could not take care of Gu Dahu, so she could only do it herself. There were many things to do at home. She was already so old, but she still had to do it herself. It was the same for Gu Chuanzong. He did not have to go to the fields previously. Before escaping, he had 4 sons. Even though Gu Dajiang worked as an accountant in the county and Gu Dai and Gu Dahu would occasionally slack off, he still had a diligent 4th son. After returning from the famine, he occasionally had to work in the fields, but he also had 2 sons. In order to have a good harvest, the 2 of them had to work. But now, the 2nd and 3rd branches did not have any strong laborers. Gu Fei was not young anymore, but he used to rely on the fact that he was the eldest grandson and was always pampered. Even if he was a child from the countryside, he still lived a pampered life. Now, he could not lift anything heavy. He could not stand such weather for an hour. The only person in old Gus' family who could work was Gu Chuanzong. Nowadays, he went out early and returned late every day. He was so tired that he went home and fell asleep. Initially, he thought that he would be able to enjoy life with so many sons. Now, it was the complete opposite. He had to support 2 families. Gu Chuanzong was very regretful now. If he had known earlier, he would have stopped 4th son from leaving the team to look for Gu Yundong and his mother. At least his youngest son would be filial to him. He sighed slowly and carried the hoe home. Unexpectedly, a familiar name suddenly sounded in her ear. Yes, Gu Dajiang's eldest daughter is very rich. Gu Chuanzong was stunned. Gu Dajiang? Eldest daughter? He looked up in confusion and turned to see Madame Hu chatting with someone under a tree not far away. He could not even lift his legs, but he still walked over numbly. Madame Hu's back was facing him, but her voice was not soft. That's Gu Yundong. I saw it with my own eyes. She's back with her silly mother. Do you know why we had to bring Bian Yuanji out? It was Gu Yundong who begged us. Now, that Bian Yuanji is going to enjoy life too. Someone at the side did not believe it. That eldest granddaughter of old Gus' family was very timid in the past. Why do you make it sound like they're 2 completely different people? Are you sure you didn't see wrongly? How could I be wrong? Madame Hu retorted excitedly. I even saw her bring Bian Yuanji to the Bian family that day and take away a lot of the things in the Bian family. She's changed. She married a rich man. Her clothes are flamboyant and she's wearing gold chains. There's a silver hairpin on her head, a jade bracelet on her wrist, and she's sitting in a carriage with 4 or 5 maidservants. Ha! Everyone was in an uproar. So rich? Madame Hu snorted. And Gu Dajiang's wife. TSK, there's a maidservant supporting her when she gets into the carriage. She's even fed. What does it matter if she's a fool? Anyway, there's someone to serve her, right? Chapter 352, Why Doesn't She Care About Me? You. TED by BXN0VL. C Omicron M. The more Madame Hu spoke, the more excited she became. Bien Yuanji has already put on new clothes. In just a few days, he's gained weight and his complexion has improved. After eating, a maidservant will wipe his mouth and make sure that his soup isn't too hot. He can buy whatever he wants. He can even throw away a stick of candied hawthorn just for fun. When she said this, even the children beside her came over and swallowed their saliva with sparkling eyes. Why would he throw it away? He can give it to me. Madame Hu glanced at the child who spoke. To you? When he was suffering here in the past, did you give him a grain of corn? Dream on. Everyone was extremely envious. If they had known that Bien Yuanji had such good fortune, they would have treated him better. One of the families in the crowd was stunned. When they thought of the bag of white rice that had suddenly appeared in their room a few days ago, their hearts pounded. They were the ones who took Bien Yuanji home for a meal when he was about to freeze to death. In that case, was he thanking them? However, old Gu, who was standing at the back of the crowd, became more and more shocked. His eyes lit up as he listened. His body, which had originally felt weak, suddenly erupted with a huge force. He pushed away the person in front of him and stood in front of Madame Hu in a few steps. She widened her eyes and asked, "Is what you said true? Is what you said true?" Madame Hu was so shocked that she almost fell off the standing stone. She barely managed to stabilize herself before she saw old Gus's weathered face clearly. She secretly pursed her lips and smiled. Of course it's true. Why would I lie to everyone? Then why didn't she come back? Why didn't she come home when she had money? Madame Hu laughed. Why do you think? Wasn't she afraid that your Gu family will cling onto her like blood-sucking insects? Old Gu, don't tell me you don't know what kind of life Gu Dajiang's family used to live. You bullied them in the past. Do you think they will come back and be filial to you? Do you think they're stupid? Let me tell you, she's smart. She secretly took Bien Yuanji away and didn't even look at you. But she's a member of old Gus' family. She's my granddaughter. How can she leave us alone when she's rich? Old Gu was so angry that he was panting. The veins on the back of his hand were bulging, as if he could not accept this fact. The Gu family had already become like this. If Gu Yundong was really rich, why would he need to work so hard? His second and third sons could also go to a good medical center to treat their illnesses. They could also live in a big house with people serving them. Madame Hu sneered. You really dare to think about it. Your granddaughter is already married. The rich man is her husband. Why should he care about you? What about Gu Dajiang? What about Gu Yunshu? My son and grandson. It would be unfilial of them to ignore me. Madame Hu smiled even more happily. I only saw Gu Dajiang's wife. As for Gu Dajiang and Gu Yunshu, I didn't see them. Don't tell me these two are gone. Think about it, if they were still alive, would Gu Yundong not bring them here? She even brought Madame Yang with her when she went out. I don't think there's anyone else in the family who can take care of her. When everyone heard this, they all thought that it made sense. Madame Yang was a fool. It would be so troublesome to bring her out. If Gu Dajiang was around, she would definitely leave her at home for him to take care of. If Gu Yunshu was around, Gu Yundong might as well bring him along instead of a fool. The daughter must have been worried without Madame Yang's close relatives by her side. Chapter 353, You Reap What You Sow You. TED by BXN0VL. See Omicron Old Gus' expression changed again and again. After a while, he suddenly roared, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Tell me where they are. I'll go find her. As he spoke, he came to pull Madame Hu. Madame Hu was pulled off a huge rock and lost her balance, spraining her ankle. She was in so much pain that her face contorted and she spoke without thinking. "All right, go and find her. Let me tell you, it was Gu Yundong who caused your family to become like this. If you're not afraid of death, go and find her again and see if she'll take the lives of your 2 sons." Everyone was speechless. The entire venue was silent. Everyone gasped and looked at Madame Hu, unable to say a word. After a while, someone couldn't help but gulp and ask, "Who, what did you say just now?" Madame Hu suddenly came back to her senses and cursed in her heart. Previously, she had really been persuaded by Ding Jinsheng not to provoke Gu Yundong. However, when she heard that the ghost she had encountered that night might have been her doing, Madame Hu could no longer remain calm. She was so angry that she wanted to settle the score with Gu Yundong. However, when she thought of how miserable old Gus's family was, she was afraid. After delaying it for a few days, the more she thought about it, the angrier she became. The angrier she became, the more indignant she became. What should she do? In the end, she pushed the responsibility to old Gus's family. Wasn't this all old Gus's family's fault? If she could not find trouble with Gu Yundong, could she not cause trouble for old Gus's family? Madame Hu was quite shrewd. She saw that there had been no movement from old Gus's family recently, so Gu Gang's family was just like that. She also noticed that MDM Shen had escaped. When one thought too much, it would be easy for one to come up with conspiracy theories. Madame Hu felt that MDM Shen had been arranged by Gu Yundong from the beginning. After MDM Shen left, there was no movement from old Gus's family. Gu Yundong must have left Jiangyu County. Therefore, Madame Hu came to Gu Village. She deliberately came to provoke old Gus's family. But she only planned to say that Gu Yundong was living a good life because of her wealth. She did not intend to reveal her and Ding Jinsheng's guesses. It was all old Gus's fault for letting her tongue slip. Madame Hu wanted to take back her words, but there were so many people around and they heard her clearly. When they regained their senses, they immediately grabbed her and asked, "Are you telling the truth? Was it Gu Yundong who did everything to old Gus's family? But she didn't come to our Gu village, how did she do it?" "That's right. Gu Yundong was so timid in the past. How dare she do such a cruel thing?" Seeing that she couldn't fool them anymore, Madame Hu decided to give up. "That's right. Those things were done by the Gu girl. She didn't come to the Gu village, but didn't I say that girl is rich now? With money, are you afraid that she won't be able to find someone to help her? She was timid in the past. But don't you see how badly she was persecuted by old Gus's family? Her father and siblings are dead, and her mother was harmed by Jia Meizi. How can she not hate her? So, this was all forced by old Gu." Madame Hu came to a conclusion. The Gu family reaped what they sowed. If they had treated Gu Yundong better in the past, wouldn't she have brought their family over to enjoy life now that she's rich? Just look at how Bian Yuanji is living now. Not far away, Madame Zhao also roughly heard it. Her expression immediately turned ferocious as she shouted, "That *TCH, I'm going to sue her. She caused our family to be like this. I'm going to sue her." Madame Hu laughed out loud when she heard this. "Go ahead. Don't blame me for not reminding you. The man that the Gu girl married is not an ordinary person. One look and you can tell that he's powerful. Otherwise, how could he make all of you lose your arms and legs? If you sue him, you won't even be able to protect your grandson." Madame Zhao's face turned pale, but old Gu suddenly roared. He turned around and pounced at Madame Zhao, grabbing her and beating her up. Chapter 354, Dust Settled You. TED by BXN0VL. C Omicron M. Everyone was stunned by this change, but old Gus's eyes were bloodshot as he hit Madame Zhao fiercely. "It's all your fault. It's all your fault, you old woman. If you hadn't treated Dajiang's family badly, we wouldn't have become like this. It's all your fault." He kept replaying what Madame Hu had just said in his mind. If he had treated them better in the past, he would have been taken away to enjoy life now. A stepmother is a stepmother. Your own son is spoiled like a piece of trash. Dajiang was your slave. You even abused Yuanji. You old woman, I'll beat you to death. Madame Zhao was about to go crazy. As she dodged, she shouted, how can you blame me? You didn't even take your own son seriously, and now you're blaming me. Gu Chuanzong, you're not a man. When we kicked their family out back then, it was clearly your idea. You're the most disgusting person. Madame Hu and the others watched from afar as they exposed each other and watched them fight each other. The Gu family was finished. Completely finished. Madame Hu pursed her lips and felt happy. She felt that she had said enough and left. Later on, she heard that old Gu and Madame Zhao were covered in injuries and had to lie in bed for a few days to recover. The Gu family was even more chaotic. Later on, Madame Zhao really complained to the village chief and wanted to arrest Gu Yundong. But the new village chief ignored her. Besides, she had no evidence and Gu Yundong was not around. Why should she be arrested? In any case, Madame Zhao did not dare to go to the county city to complain to the county magistrate. She could only go home gloomily. Old Gu had been regretting not treating Gu Dajiang's family well these days. He had gone to look for Madame Hu several times. When he went to her house, he cried bitterly. As he cried, he said that he missed his eldest son and his eldest granddaughter. He asked her where Gu Yundong was. How could Madame Hu know? She was so annoyed by him that she regretted it so much that she had acted rashly. In the end, Ding Jincheng simply told him about the inn that Gu Yundong used to stay in. Anyway, he only knew about that inn. Old Gu went to look for her but the waiter said that she had left long ago. Old Gu wanted to verify if that person was Gu Yundong, so he listened to the waiter describe how rich she was, how well she ate, and how good she looked. It was as if he was stabbed in the heart. After he returned, he scolded Madame Zhao and the two of them fought again. Then, he went to look for Madame Hu to cause trouble, claiming that it was her fault for not telling them earlier and causing the Ding family to be in trouble. The other members of the Gu family naturally heard about what happened to Gu Yundong. They were jealous and regretful at the same time. In the end, they became envious of Bian Yuanji. Old Gus's life was getting poorer and poorer, and everybody was in chaos every day. Old Gu thought about Gu Yundong all day long. He hoped that she would come back and take him away. Gu Yundong sneezed several times because of this. Xiao Qingyuan almost thought that she had caught a cold. The temperature difference between morning and night was indeed a little big. They were on the road, so there would be times when they didn't realize it. Gu Yundong felt that her family missed her, so she could not wait to go back. It took 3 days to travel from Jianyu County to Feng County, where the Shen family's home was located. Gu Yundong sent her all the way and took a slight detour to bring her directly to the town where her family lived. However, the closer she got to home, the more silent MDM Shen became. When she arrived at her destination, she sighed heavily and said in a low mood, "Thank you for your help along the way. We will meet again if fate allows." After saying that, she looked at Madame Yang and Bian Yuanji before lifting the curtain and going down. However, in the next moment, she suddenly retreated. Chapter 355, Can You Bring Me Along? You. TED by BXN0VL. C. Omicron M. Gu Yundong was stunned. What's wrong? MDM Shen's expression changed slightly as she glanced outside the carriage curtain. Gu Yundong was puzzled. She peeked out and was stunned. Why was this person here? She let go and sat back down. She looked at MDM Shen, who was looking uncertain. What are you going to do? However, MDM Shen took a deep breath, as if she had made up her mind. Her eyes lit up slightly, and she became energetic. Actually, I've been holding a question in my heart for the past few days, Yundong, she said. Can I follow you to Xuanhe Prefecture and Yongfu village? Gu Yundong was surprised. You're not going home? Shin smiled bitterly. My parents are gone, and I don't have any relatives at home. Actually, I've been hesitating. I thought that even if I went back, I would be alone. I've felt very relaxed and comfortable spending time with you guys these few days. Especially when I heard you introduce Yongfu village to Yuanji, I yearned for it very much. She was also a little reluctant to part with those rare friends. After spending a few days together, Gu Yundong, Xiao Qingyuan, Mao, and the others were all very clear about her past in the Gu village. They knew that she had become a concubine to an old man in his late 50s, but no one looked at her strangely, despised her, or distanced themselves from her. Sometimes, she even felt that she was not clean. When she went back, she might just live a life in a daze, but deep down, she still yearned for a beautiful life. I've been wondering if I should go home or find another place to start over. Now that I see Gu Wanbao here, I've made up my mind. That's right. When she lifted the curtain just now, she saw Gu Wanbao. No one expected that this person who had escaped from Gu village would actually come to the Shin family's hometown. However, looking at his sallow and haggard appearance, it was obvious that he was not doing well. Gu Yundong smiled. Since you've decided, let's go. Thanks a lot. No matter what, they had a deep friendship. Gu Yundong was very supportive of her decision. The carriage changed direction and headed out of town again. Gu Wanbao, who was squatting in the corner, only had time to squint at the back of the carriage before he sniffled and shrank back. Madame Shin's original name was Shinsitian. Perhaps because the direction in her heart was finally clear, her smile could not help but become much brighter. The group went out of town. Shinsitian first went to pay her respects to her parents' graves and told them about her decision to leave. Her parents' burial was arranged by the Gu family, so it was not strange for Gu Wanbao to know that her family was in this town. After bidding farewell to the Shin parents, the group of people moved much faster. They had a carriage, a mule cart, and a horse. Gu Yundong still liked to ride horses. Occasionally, when she was bored in the carriage, she would ride Gale, the horse brought by Xiao Qingyuan, for a while. Mao and his companions were extremely envious. There were a few times when they wanted to ask Xiao Qingyuan if they could ride it, but they were frightened by his sharp gaze and didn't dare to say a word. Other than Gu Yundong, no one else could touch the horse. The group of people walked steadily. Occasionally, they would encounter people who were in the same direction as them. They kept a distance from each other and only nodded. Seeing that they were only a few days away from reaching Stinky Egg's village, Gu Yundong could not help but think of Bien Mulan's grave. As she rode her horse, she gradually slowed down and wondered if she should get into the carriage and have a good talk with Yuanji about this. At this moment, two carriages also came from the opposite side of the road. When they met, the horse under Gu Yundong was suddenly shocked. It suddenly roared and ran forward crazily. Chapter 356, Fear You. TED by BXN0VL. C Omicron M, Gu Yundong screamed and hurriedly grabbed the reins of the horse. She tried her best to stabilize herself and try not to fall off. Xiao Qingyuan's expression changed drastically. He suddenly pulled the carriage and hurriedly instructed the people in the carriage, "Miss Shen, take good care of them." As he spoke, he took out his dagger and cut off the reins. He mounted Wind Chaser and chased after him desperately. Shinsitian only had time to hug Madame Yang and Bien Yuanji. When she stuck her head out again, she could barely see Xiao Qingyuan's disappearing back. "Be careful." She could only shout. Then, she turned around to comfort the panicked Madame Yang. Although Gu Yundong was very familiar with riding horses, she still could not deal with such a crazy horse that seemed to have been provoked. She could only hold the reins tightly and try her best to stabilize herself so that she would not fall. It was fine if she fell down here, but she was afraid that she would be trampled to death by the horse before she could get up. "Gale, calm down." She tried to calm it down, but at this moment, Gale could not realize who was on her back. It could not even tell the direction anymore and began to run into the forest. Gu Yundong hurriedly lowered her body to prevent the branches from scratching his face and eyes. However, she was anxious. The horse did not slow down at all. Yundong. A familiar voice came from behind. Gu Yundong knew that it was Xiao Qingyuan. She knew that this person would definitely not abandon her, but she could not turn around to look. Fortunately, Xiao Qingyuan rode Wind Chaser that was not agitated. Moreover, he had been with Gu Yundong for a long time and clearly realized that she was in danger. He quickly caught up with her. The path in the forest was not easy to take. After Gale was blocked by the trees twice, it finally slowed down a little. Wind Chaser took the opportunity to run forward, and the distance between the two horses slowly shortened. Xiao Qingyuan controlled Wind Chaser to block Gale and reached out to Gu Yundong. "Give me your hand. I'll pull you over." The horse was still running, but Gu Yundong was much more relaxed when she saw him. She held the reins with one hand and handed the other to Xiao Qingyuan. Taking advantage of the moment when the two horses approached, she suddenly exerted strength and pounced towards him. Xiao Qingyuan exerted strength and carried her over. Now that there was no one on the back of Gale, it quickly rushed forward again. Xiao Qingyuan could no longer care about it. He only hugged Gu Yundong tightly and calmed his wildly beating heart before slowly stopping. Gu Yundong was also panting heavily. She hugged his waist and gradually regained her senses. After a while, she retreated slightly. However, halfway through, the hand on her waist suddenly tightened, and she was pressed back down. Her ears were filled with the sound of a certain someone's heartbeat. "Let's wait a little longer." His voice with lingering fear came from above. Gu Yundong paused and did not move. After a long time, she heard Xiao Qingyuan's slightly hoarse voice. "I almost thought that I wouldn't be able to save you in time." Her voice was still trembling. Gu Yundong was in a daze. She did not expect him to be so afraid. She reached out to pat his back, but as soon as she opened her palm, she could not help but gasp. Xiao Qingyuan was stunned and quickly let go of her. Only then did he see that her hands were already covered in blood from the reins. He was instantly vexed. Gu Yundong comforted him instead. "It's all right. There's a first aid kit in the carriage. It'll be fine after applying some medicine. Let's go back now," Xiao Qingyuan said as he turned his horse around. Gu Yundong thought of Gale that had disappeared into the forest. What about the horse? "Ignore it." Xiao Qingyuan's voice was extremely cold. Chapter 357, I'll give you money as compensation you. TED by BXN0VL. C. Omicron M. Xiao Qingyuan still hugged her tightly and rode back with her. They had already run a long way. Madame Yang and the others were probably worried to death. Xiao Qingyuan thought that the injury on her hand needed to be treated properly and couldn't help but speed up. However, when they saw where the carriage was parked from afar, their faces could not help but darken. Mao and the others were either holding their stomachs or hands and feet as they fell to the ground, groaning in pain. Shen Sidian protected Madame Yang and Bian Yuanji as she stood beside the carriage and looked at the people opposite her warily. There were 7 people standing in front of them. One was a middle-aged man dressed in riches who looked like the master. The other was a boy in his early teens. There were 2 tall men who looked like guards. There were also 2 coachmen and a maidservant. There were also 2 carriages behind them. This group of people was the ones who had brushed past them at that time. Xiao Qingyuan rode his horse forward. When Mao and the other 3 saw them, their eyes lit up. They couldn't care less about the pain on their bodies. They stood up and staggered over. "Young master, miss, it's him. It's that kid who blew an arrow at Gale's butt. That's why Gale suddenly ran crazily. We wanted to stop them, but we couldn't beat him." He pointed at the boy in his early teens. Xiao Qingyuan's sharp gaze suddenly shot towards him. The child was a little afraid when he met his gaze. However, he quickly thought of the 2 guards on his side. The 4 people who wanted to stop them just now had been beaten until their butts were swollen. What was there to be afraid of? Therefore, the boy raised his chin and snorted. So what if it's me? He was still playing with a small blowpipe in his hand. I just wanted to see if that horse is a good horse. I heard that even if a smart horse has a knife cut into its body, it will consider the owner on its back and endure the pain. It seems that your horse can't do it. Before he could finish speaking, his head was hit hard. He looked up and glared at the middle-aged man. Father, why did you hit me? The man didn't look at him. He only cupped his hands at Xiao Qingyuan and said with a smile, I'm really sorry. I didn't teach my son well. This girl was frightened. Fortunately, she's safe and sound. Hey, race 20 taels of silver. Take it as a compensation for you. He took out a banknote and handed it over. Xiao Qingyuan did not even look at it. He just bent down and entered the carriage. He took out the first aid kit and lowered his head to carefully treat the wound on Gu Yundong's palm. Madame Yang and the others exclaimed and hurriedly ran forward. Dong Dong, are you bleeding? Madame Yang's heart ached terribly. She lowered her head and blew on it for her tears almost falling. Gu Yundong could only comfort her. It's all right, it doesn't hurt. The man's outstretched hand was a little awkward. When he saw Gu Yundong's palm, he suddenly realized something and quickly took out another banknote. This is 50 taels. Please accept it. Xiao Qingyuan still had his head lowered. He had already wrapped her hand with gauze layer by layer. The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. Wasn't it a little too thick? Seeing that the strangers had ignored them again and again, the child finally couldn't help but say, Hey, my father is talking to you. Do you hear him? Seeing that the hand was treated, Xiao Qingyuan let go and walked towards the child. One of the guards instinctively sensed danger and reached out to stand in front of the child. The child was a little unwilling to be protected, which made it seem as if he was afraid of them. Chapter 358, So Handsome That I Want to Scream You. TED by BXN0VL. C Omicron M. He pushed the guard away and raised his chin high. He looked at Xiao Qingyuan with disdain. Why? Do you want to hit me? Our Ahai and Afong are experts. Look at your 4 servants. They wanted to attack just now, but they were beaten until they cried for their parents. It's extremely embarrassing. Mao and the other 3 trembled in anger, but what he said was the truth. Even if they were tied up together, they would not be able to defeat the 2 guards. Xiao Qingyuan looked down at the child and suddenly grabbed his wrist, dragging him to the side. The child was shocked and screamed. The expression of the guard standing beside him, Ahai, changed drastically. He raised his hand and was about to hit Xiao Qingyuan. With a swoosh, an arrow suddenly shot over. Ahai subconsciously dodged to the side, but the arrow brushed past his shoulder, leaving a trail of blood. Finally, it nailed heavily to the ground. Ahai looked up in shock and saw that Gu Yundong, whom they had ignored earlier, was sitting on the shaft of the carriage. She was holding an exquisite crossbow in her hand and was squinting in his direction. However, Gu Yundong shook her hands slightly. It was all Xiao Qingyuan's fault for wrapping her hand like a dumpling. Her agility was greatly reduced and she almost missed. She looked at Ahai and smiled. Don't move. Ahai only paused for a moment, but Xiao Qingyuan threw the child and his hand onto the horse beside him and whipped the horse's butt. The horse neighed and ran forward in pain. Help, father, help me. The middle-aged man was stunned by this sudden change. He suddenly came back to his senses. Aren't you going to save young master? Feng, who was standing beside him, hurriedly jumped onto the other horse and chased after him as fast as lightning. Mao and the others looked at Xiao Qingyuan and Gu Yundong with starry eyes. Why? They were so handsome and tacit. Their followers wanted to scream. The middle-aged man was furious. He pointed at Xiao Qingyuan with a trembling finger. You, his face flushed red as he suddenly shouted, "Ah Hai!" Ah Hai quickly attacked Xiao Qingyuan. He was a professional guard. Although Xiao Qingyuan also had skills, he was not a professional. Most of his skills were from fighting various prey on the mountain. The escorts in the agency had also taught him. Therefore, at first, Xiao Qingyuan was at a slight disadvantage, but after he became familiar with it, Ah Hai found it a little difficult. In particular, he had been injured previously. Although it was just a superficial wound, his aura was already weak. The middle-aged man was a little flustered and exasperated when he saw this. He asked the two coachmen to go forward and help. There was no need for Gu Yundong to speak. Ah Mao and the rest, who were slowly recovering, rushed forward and started punching and kicking the two coachmen. If they could not defeat the guards, couldn't the four of them deal with two coachmen? They had also been in the gangs and fought for territory. Who didn't know how to fight? On the other hand, the only maidservant present was smart. She looked around and saw Madame Yang and the others standing not far away to watch the commotion, so she wanted to sneak over. But she had just taken a step when Gu Yundong aimed her crossbow at her. She raised her eyebrows and smiled. "Come here." The maidservant shuddered and her hands trembled. She quickly lowered her head and pretended that she did not exist. The middle-aged man's face finally turned pale. He regretted it. He should have left quickly before the two of them returned. Oh, finally, the knife in Ahai's hand was struck down by Xiao Qingyuan, and he was sent flying. When Ah Go saw this, he immediately pounced over. He picked up the rope and tied the man up. He could not help but hit the man's head. "Who told you to kick my stomach?" Chapter 359, Gu Concubine Utted by Bexenville. C. Omicron M. The middle-aged man's face was ashen. He glared at Xiao Qingyuan and said, "Do you know who I am? Then do you know who we are?" Gu Yundong jumped down from the shaft of the carriage, looking insufferably arrogant. "Do you know who I am? Who wouldn't say that?" The middle-aged man was stunned. He took a closer look at Gu Yundong and the rest. They were dressed very commonly and did not look like people with power and influence. However, the aura of these two people made people feel that they could not be underestimated. They were so confident. Could it be that their backer was also very powerful? The middle-aged man's surname was Zhou. He was originally a wealthy businessman in Qingan Prefecture. Later on, when Qingan Prefecture was in chaos, his business plummeted. Also, his backer was transferred to Xuanhe Prefecture, so he simply moved his entire family to Xuanhe Prefecture. Their current location belonged to the Qingan Prefecture. Other than some close friends, his backer was really not here. Could it be that these people had someone backing them up in Qingan Prefecture? Zhou Dafu pondered in his heart and became a little uncertain. At this moment, Feng rode his horse and brought back Zhou Xiaojun, who had almost fainted from crying. The child was indeed saved, but he was frightened. As soon as he was carried off the horse, his legs went limp and he fell to the ground. Ah Feng looked at Ah Hai, the coachman, and the others who were tied up. His expression immediately changed, and he was about to draw his saber. Gu Yundong had somehow gotten into the carriage behind Zhou Dafu. A dagger was pressed against his neck as he glanced at Ah Feng. The latter immediately stopped and was tied up by Ah Mao. Zhou Dafu stared at the dagger on his neck and trembled in fear. He finally realized that he had become meat on the chopping board. His voice immediately softened. "Guys, let's talk things out. This matter is indeed our family's fault. We will apologize and compensate the two of you. Can you give us a price?" Gu Yundong raised his eyebrows. Zhou Dafu sensed the change in her attitude and hurriedly said, "Look, my son did go overboard and did something wrong, but you've also taken revenge. Look, he's so scared that he can't speak. We're even now, right?" Everyone looked at Zhou Xiaojun, who was covered in sweat. This child in his early teens had probably never experienced such a life and death situation. He was so frightened that his face turned pale and his hands and feet trembled. The lesson was indeed quite ruthless. But Gu Yundong did not regret it at all. He had asked for it. If she had not been calm enough, if Xiao Qingyuan had not risked everything to save her, she would have been thrown off the horse and trampled to death. She was just giving him a taste of his own medicine. I think you should thank us for helping you educate your son. This person didn't think much of it at first. Although he apologized, his sincerity was very perfunctory. Otherwise, why would he beat up Mao and the others after he did something wrong? Zhou Dafu could only smile and say, "Miss, you're right. Then about this, of course you must compensate. Not only do you have to compensate me, but you also have to compensate them. They were also beaten up badly by you." Gu Yundong pointed at Mao and the others. Zhou Dafu nodded repeatedly. Of course, of course. This time, he took out 2,000 taels of silver. I didn't bring much with me on this trip. Take this money, my lady, and go to the pharmacy to buy the best jade skin cream to wipe your hands. I guarantee that there won't be any scars. Gu Yundong took the silver and moved the dagger away. I'll accept my compensation. As for the four of them, you can talk to them yourself. Zhou Dafu, Mao and the others immediately surrounded him. After receiving the compensation, they happily boarded the mule cart. As soon as they left, Zhou Dafu's expression darkened. He glanced at the two useless guards and finally scolded Zhou Xiaojun. What else do you know other than causing trouble every day? Do you know anything? You've been spoiled by your mother. Zhou Xiaojun was still in a daze. After experiencing such a thing, he felt extremely aggrieved. In the end, his father scolded him without care and he exploded on the spot. You still have the cheek to scold me? If you hadn't taken that old woman surnamed Gu as your concubine, would mother have been so angry that she went back to her parents' house? If mother hadn't gone back to her parents' house, we wouldn't have had to come and pick her up, and we wouldn't have met those fiends. All of this is your fault. Chapter 360, Going to Your Place to Propose, edited by Bexenville. C. Omicron M. U. Zhou Xiaojun sneered. I don't know what you like about that Gu woman. She's already so old and has even given birth to a child. If you want to take a concubine, go find a virgin girl. Why would you treat an old woman like a treasure? Zhou Dafu glared at him. What do you know? Your Aunt Gu had a hard time in the past. It's rare for her to enjoy life, so why can't you stop going against her? Your mother is so jealous. She's not virtuous at all. Why don't you say that you're a pig? Zhou Xiaojun wiped his face fiercely and climbed into the carriage himself. However, his hands and feet were still weak. It took a while for the maidservant to help him up. Zhou Dafu was so angry that his hands trembled. Who would say that about their father? This child was simply an unfilial son. He had lost so much money and was very unhappy, and he could not control his son. He hated his wife even more because she had spoiled their son. Gu Yundong and the rest had already walked far away. In the end, Xiao Qingyuan rode Wind Chaser into the forest to bring out Gale that had calmed down. Sure enough, there was a small arrow stuck in Gale's back. When Ah Go saw this, he quickly volunteered, I'll do it. My father used to be a veterinarian. Everyone was speechless. Your father was actually a veterinarian? Mao was even more surprised. Your father was a veterinarian, but you don't know how to ride a mule cart? It took them a long time to get used to it. Ah Go was dumbfounded. Why does the vet's son have to know how to ride a mule cart? Isn't that the job of a driver? You make a lot of sense. Gu Yundong only pulled out the arrow from Gale's body and applied medicine to the wound when they arrived at a nearby village. After this incident, Gu Yundong remained in the carriage. Coincidentally, Madame Yang was also worried and did not allow her to go out. Gu Yundong looked at her hands that were wrapped up like dumplings and felt very helpless. At night, they stayed at an inn in town. After settling down, Gu Yundong finally had the time to ask Mao and the others, "How much money did you get?" The four of them looked at each other and chuckled. Each of them took out a banknote worth 100 taels of silver. They were so excited that their bodies were trembling. 100 taels. Is that all you've got? You only asked for 100 taels. Isn't 100 taels a lot? Gu Yundong was stunned. 100 taels of silver. Now that she had a workshop that could earn money, 100 taels of silver did not seem like much. But when she first came to this world, she even had to calculate every 1 tael of silver carefully. 100 taels of silver was enough to build her green brick tiled house. In Yongfu village, there were probably not 5 families who had 100 taels of silver. Sure enough, it was easy to go from frugal to extravagant, but difficult to go from extravagant to frugal. Gu Yundong smiled and nodded. It's quite a lot. Since you have the money, you have to think about how to use it. You can't gamble or go to brothels. Definitely. The four of them happily took the banknotes and left. Gu Yundong did not care anymore. When only she and Xiao Qingyuan were left in the room, she asked, "What do you plan to do with the four of them?" "When I go back, they'll find a master who practices martial arts and let them learn their skills." After today's incident, Xiao Qingyuan had been thinking about this problem. Mao and the others were young and smart. It was not too late for them to practice martial arts. Gu Yundong nodded. "All right, as long as you've thought it through." She yawned and was about to return to her room to rest. Unexpectedly, just as she was about to open the door, she heard Xiao Qingyuan's voice behind her. "After returning to Yongfu village, they'll find someone to propose marriage at your house." Chapter 361, Be More Reserved uttered by Bexenville. Si Omicron M. Gu Yundong? Gu Yundong. She whipped her head around and looked at him in shock, wondering if she had heard him correctly. What did you just say? Could it be that she was too sleepy and was hallucinating? Xiao Qingyuan repeated, "After we go back, they'll find someone to propose marriage." "What do you think of Aunt Tseng?" "Our families are familiar with her and we live next to each other. If there's anything we don't know, she'll remind us." Gu Yundong was sure that she did not hear wrongly this time, but she still looked stunned. After a long pause, she slowly turned around and sat opposite him. Gu Yundong's throat was a little dry. She picked up the cup and wanted to drink some water. Only then did she realize that Xiao Qingyuan seemed to have finished the water in the cup. She looked up into his twinkling eyes and realized that he was even more nervous than she was. Seriously, silence. Silence. The two of them just sat there without saying anything. They didn't know what to say. Gu Yundong's mind was still a little blank. She could not understand why he suddenly proposed. This was a proposal, right? No, he didn't even ask for anything. He made the decision directly. At the thought of this, Gu Yundong's mind instantly cleared up. She widened her eyes and glared at the man opposite her. "Why are you suddenly going to my house to propose marriage? It's not really sudden. Didn't we hug this morning? It was quite long." Xiao Qingyuan lowered his head, but the tips of his ears turned inexplicably red. Gu Yundong was speechless. Hug? They hugged? You're going to my house to propose marriage because you've hugged me and you're taking responsibility for me? Xiao Qingyuan knew that she had misunderstood. He immediately looked up and shook his head with a serious expression. "Of course not. I originally wanted to wait until you reached adulthood, but since you've already hugged me, I can only bring it forward." He said it as if he had no choice, but the corners of his lips kept curling up. Gu Yundong could not help but raise her leg and kick him. "What do you mean you'll go when I'm of marriageable age? Did I agree? You can go just like that?" Unexpectedly, Xiao Qingyuan did not guard against this kick and fell back. Gu Yundong subconsciously reached out to pull him. The next moment, both of them fell to the ground. Xiao Qingyuan was fast. When he fell, he turned his body slightly so that Gu Yundong would fall on him and not get hurt at all. Then, he looked up and asked uncertainly, "You don't agree?" There was actually a trace of grievance in his words. Gu Yundong was so angry that she laughed. "How can you propose marriage without confirming the relationship first? Then, shall we confirm it now? Do you think you can confirm it just because you say so?" Gu Yundong struggled to stand up and tugged at her clothes. Her heart softened when she saw that he was still lying on the ground with his eyes wide open in despair. Actually, although the two of them did not say it explicitly, they had a tacit understanding. Gu Yundong was not a hesitant person. Since both parties wanted to be together, there was nothing wrong with being together. But, was this how a man went to a woman's house to propose marriage? She felt that something was amiss. Gu Yundong had never had a boyfriend in her 2 lifetimes. In terms of relationships, she was actually very clumsy. However, she had at least read books and watched television. She had also read a lot of Chicken Soup for the Soul. The books had said that she could not let a man succeed too easily. Otherwise, he would think that she was easy to woo and would not cherish her. She had to be more reserved. Hence, she thought about it and coughed lightly. In the end, she said, "I have to think about it." Chapter 362, I've seen this uttered by Bexenville. C. Omicron M. Xiao Qingyuan sat up from the ground. "All right, you can consider it first." Gu Yundong lowered her eyes and fell into deep thought. It looked like she was considering whether his character was good or not and whether he was worth entrusting her life to. Xiao Qingyuan was still a little nervous. After a while, he asked, "Have you thought about it?" It had been 15 minutes. Gu Yundong thought that she should be reserved enough. Hence, she nodded. "I've thought about it. Then, when we get back, I'll ask Auntie Dong to go to your house to propose marriage." "Okay." Gu Yundong nodded. Xiao Qingyuan's eyes lit up and his breathing quickened. "Don't go back on your word." His expression was like a wolf's, as if he would pounce on Gu Yundong if she went back on her word. At that moment, Gu Yundong felt as if she had been tricked. She frowned slightly, but still nodded. "I mean what I say." With that, she quickly turned around and left. She felt that her face seemed to be a little red. If she stayed any longer, she might burn up. Xiao Qingyuan watched her leave and finally heaved a sigh of relief. Neither of them slept that night. The next day, Ah Mao and the other 3 were surprised to see them yawning with dark circles under their eyes. Only Shinsidian seemed to have sensed something. She pursed her lips and secretly laughed. After walking for another 2 days, the group finally arrived at the village where Stinky Egg was. Because she had been here once, many people in the village still remembered Gu Yundong. They just found it strange that when she went there were only 2 people, but when she came back, there were 2 carriages. Originally, she wanted to stay at Stinky Egg's house, but it was obvious that the place was too small. He could only borrow a few rooms from his neighbor. Stinky Egg was very happy to see her. After being happy, he was a little disappointed. Gu Yundong found it strange. "What's wrong?" "Sister Gu, after you left, I went to look for the medicinal herb you mentioned, but I couldn't find it after searching for a long time." Gu Yundong was taken aback. That medicinal herb is rare to begin with. Of course, it's not easy to find. You don't have to deliberately look for it. Stinky Egg knew that. She had said that last time. But he knew that Gu Yundong would come again, so he wanted to surprise her. She gave his family so much money. Not only did they repay their debt, but they also repaired the house. When it was raining again, there would be no more leaks. His father said that he wanted to do some small business with the remaining money. When his father earned money, he would send him to school. Gu Yundong did not expect Stinky Egg's father to have such thoughts. "Send you to school? That's a good thing." "Yes." Stinky Egg was still a little embarrassed. My father said that Sister Gu knows what those herbs are for when she sees them because she has studied. In the future, when I can read, I won't waste good herbs like ordinary flowers. Stinky Egg was very happy to be able to study. He was very glad that he had met Sister Gu before and their family had improved. Actually, her parents had said that if Sister Gu had not said it explicitly at that time, as long as she cleverly said that she liked the flowers, she could take them away without spending a single cent. However, Sister Gu did not do that. She was a person with a conscience. Xiao Qingyuan asked, "What medicinal herb?" Gu Yundong did not hide it from him. She took out the medical book she had copied and flipped to one of the pages. "This is it. I got this book from Dr. Song. It's filled with herbs. If you see anything on it in the future, you have to be careful and pick it back for me." Xiao Qingyuan liked it when she instructed him so bluntly. It felt like the two of them were very close. He nodded as he flipped through the pages. "Huh. I've seen this before." Chapter 363, The Gap Between People Utted by Bexenville. Xiaomicron Gu Yundong's eyes widened. Was this for real? She quickly leaned over to take a look. "You've really seen it before?" Xiao Qingyuan nodded and turned another page. "I've seen this too." He turned another 2 pages. "I seem to have seen this too." Gu Yundong was speechless. Didn't Song Dajiang, this liar, say that these were precious and rare herbs? No, maybe he remembered wrongly. After all, there were many similar herbs. She asked in detail, "Are you sure? Is it possible that you saw it wrongly? Where did you see it?" "The environment and habits are written on it." "I should be right. I saw it in the mountains. If you want it, I'll pick it for you another day." Xiao Qingyuan could already recognize a lot of words now. He was a fast learner in this aspect. Deep in the mountains? That's right, the deep mountain behind Yongfu village stretched for thousands of miles, but most of the villagers in the surrounding villages were active at the foot of the mountain, picking some wild vegetables, mushrooms, and firewood. Even the hunters were mostly hunting in the periphery. There were very few people who entered the deep mountains. However, Xiao Qingyuan had been there more than once. No one had destroyed or picked them in the deep mountains, so there were definitely many good things. It was not strange for him to see these precious herbs. Gu Yundong's eyes lit up. Was it possible that Bai Muzi, the one her mother needed to treat illnesses, could be found there? She quickly flipped to Bai Muzi's page. "Have you seen this before?" Xiao Qingyuan read it carefully and shook his head regretfully. "I've never seen it before. If I see it again, I'll bring it back for you. Then take a second look and remember what it looks like, in case you forget it when the time comes." Xiao Qingyuan smiled and said, "No need. I'll remember it." "Already?" "It's not just that. I've memorized everything I saw earlier." "Don't worry." Gu Yundong was speechless. "Didn't you just read it once? Are you sure you're not lying to me?" She glanced at him suspiciously and flipped open one of the pages, covering the words on it. She pointed at the picture and asked, "What's this?" Xiao Qingyuan only glanced at it and quickly explained the characteristics of the herbs. Gu Yundong stole a glance and found that every word was exactly the same. Was there such a huge difference between people? Gu Yundong was a little indignant. Why? She had memorized it seriously. How could she forget it so easily? Xiao Qingyuan seemed to have seen that she had suffered a blow. He quickly said, "Actually, I've already forgotten about it." He. There was no sincerity in lying. She threw the book at him. "Since you have such a good memory, take a good look at this book. In the future, when you encounter good medicinal herbs, don't miss a single one." Xiao Qingyuan quickly caught it and agreed without hesitation. Okay. Gu Yundong felt that he was too obedient and wondered if she had bullied him. After a pause, she added, "It's best if you don't go deep into the mountains. It's too dangerous." It's just picking herbs, not fighting a tiger. It's still easy to get hurt. Then, I'll tell you before I go. And get prepared first. Gu Yundong was slightly satisfied. She pursed her lips and left. The corners of Xiao Qingyuan's mouth curled up slightly. He covered his chest and felt soft. In the corner, Stinky Egg, who had been completely ignored, finally said weakly, "Why did Sister Gu leave?" Before he could finish speaking, Xiao Qingyuan glanced at him and turned to leave. The next day, Gu Yundong brought Bian Yuanji and Madame Yang to Bian Mulan's grave. Due to the last repair, the grave looked much tidier. Chapter 364, Arriving at Fengkai County utted by Bexenville. Omicron M. As soon as Bian Yuanji walked closer, tears streamed down his face. He subconsciously knelt on the ground and sobbed, but he tried his best to suppress his voice. Gu Yundong led Madame Yang to the side, leaving him to talk to Bian Mulan in private. "Sister, I'm here to see you. Don't worry, I'm doing very well now. Although Grandpa and second uncle don't like me, you're right. We still have first uncle and fourth uncle. I'm going to first uncle's house now. My cousin said that they're my family. In the future, I won't be alone. I'll live well. I just miss you. If only Big Sis was here too." As he spoke, he couldn't help but wipe his tears. "I haven't found father and mother yet, but I know that they're definitely still alive. I'll definitely be able to see them. We're here today to move your grave. I'll bring you along to first uncle's village. In the future, when we reunite with father, mother, first uncle, and fourth uncle, you'll be able to see us. You won't be alone here. In the future, I'll visit you every year." Big Sis, he finally broke down in tears. "Have a safe journey." He bent down and kowtowed heavily. It had been half a year. His elder sister had been gone for half a year, but Bian Yuanji still felt as if it was yesterday. Now, when he thought of Bian Mulan's voice and smile, he still felt as if his heart was being pricked by needles. Such a good sister was gone just like that. She was so young and had never enjoyed life. She had never had a child and had died at the most beautiful age. Her parents had not even seen her for the last time. Bian Yuanji pressed his forehead against the ground, but his heart was filled with bitterness. Finally, he couldn't help but cry out loud. His childish voice was filled with reluctance and despair. Madame Yang, who was not far away, could not help but lean on Gu Yundong's shoulder and whimper. Gu Yundong patted her soundlessly. After a long while, he walked forward and helped Bian Yuanji up, whose face was red from crying and he could barely breathe. As soon as the little thing stood up, his legs went weak and he fell to the ground uncontrollably. Xiao Qingyuan came over to carry him down the mountain. After he left, Gu Yundong asked the villagers to help. With a sound, lift the coffin, Bian Mulan finally left the wilderness and prepared to return to her roots. Gu Yundong placed the cremated ashes into an urn and carefully wrapped them in cloth before handing them to Bian Yuanji. Bian Yuanji hugged her tightly and cried for a while before thanking her solemnly with red eyes. With Bian Mulan's matter settled, Gu Yundong did not stay any longer. After bidding farewell to Stinky Egg and his family, she set off on her return journey. After being away for so long, Gu Yundong was already eager to return home. She could not wait to see the two little fellows at home. Madame Yang also missed them. She held the two puzzles that Gu Yundong had made for her tightly in her arms and was ambitiously waiting to teach the two children how to play when she got home. Bian Yuanji, on the other hand, had been a little down for the past few days, but he gradually became nervous. After all, he was going to a strange place. Even though he had good friends there, he still felt uneasy. After leaving Stinky Egg's village, they did not follow the original path and took a shortcut. Finally, after more than half a month, they arrived at Fengkai County. It was not even noon yet. If they were fast enough, they could return to Yongfu village for lunch. Chapter 365, Yongfu Village's Change Utted by Bexenville. CM Fengkai County was very lively. Shen Sidian lifted the curtain and looked outside. She sighed. It's much more prosperous than Jiangyu County. Of course. Jiangyu County had just experienced a disaster and was in the midst of reconstruction. How could it compare to Fengkai County? Bian Yuanji, who was in a daze, could not help but come over to take a look. There were many vendors on the road. All kinds of shouts and hawking sounded one after another. He even heard the sound of striking iron and the shouts of the waiters at the inn along the way. Everyone's faces were filled with smiles and satisfaction, as if they were from a different world than Jiangyu County. Gu Yundong sat beside him and said in a low voice, "Don't be afraid. We're just going to first uncle's house. Think about it. You'll be able to see your best friend, Ah Shu, soon. Aren't you happy?" "Of course I'm happy." Bian Yuanji immediately said, "Cousin, I'm not afraid. I'm just not used to it." Gu Yundong patted his head. "It's all right. We weren't used to it when we first arrived. You'll get better in time." Hearing her words, Bian Yuanji couldn't help but think of when Ah Shu first came to this county. Was he as lost and helpless as him? Suddenly, Bian Yuanji wasn't so nervous anymore. What's going on over there? It looks so lively." Shen Sidian suddenly pointed at a restaurant beside them and asked. Gu Yundong glanced at it. It was Lu Weiss Jinxiu restaurant. It was usually quite lively, but today. Gu Yundong had heard Lu Wei complain that these students were the most annoying. It would be fine if their family was rich and generous, but if their family was poor and liked to pretentiously gather in the best restaurant in the county, it would really be a headache. These people usually stayed for an entire day. They didn't eat much and kept talking, affecting others. If the boss asked them to leave, these people would scold the boss for being unscrupulous and greedy. In Gu Yundong's opinion, they should not be spoiled. It was a restaurant and a business to begin with. If you want to eat, eat. If you don't, scram. Could Ah Shu be inside? You said that Ah Shu is also studying in school now. Will he also come here to discuss knowledge with others? Bian Yuanji looked forward to it. Gu Yundong waved her hand. He's still young and has just entered the school. He won't appear here. He should still be in school. Let's go back to Yongfu village first. When Ah Shu comes back and sees us, he will definitely be very happy. Yeah. The carriage gradually drove away. Not long after they left, a small figure raised his head and puffed out his chest. He walked into Jinxiu restaurant in an awe-inspiring manner. Gu Yundong was in a hurry to go home, so she did not check out the shops in the county. She only glanced at them when she passed by and saw that everything was normal. Zhuangzi was welcoming the guests enthusiastically, so she put down the curtain. The carriage soon arrived at Yongfu village. Gu Yundong watched from afar and felt that Yongfu village seemed to have changed a lot in the few months she had been away. However, as soon as they entered the village, they heard the sound of horse hooves behind them. Gu Yundong vaguely heard a familiar voice. "Excuse me, please excuse me." Chapter 366:1 was fighting against injustice uttered by Bexenville. CM Ah Mao, who was driving the carriage, pulled the reins to the side and muttered, "The roads in this village are so narrow. Why are you riding a fast horse? Don't you know that you'll bump into someone?" However, Gu Yundong had already lifted the curtain and looked out. Indeed, she recognized the person riding over from afar. She raised her hand and called out, "Luan." Luan was stunned. When he took a closer look, he was so excited that he almost fell off the horse. He quickly pulled the reins and stopped. Then, he dismounted and ran forward. He said happily, "Lady Gu, you're back? You just came back? That's great." When he saw Xiao Qingyuan in the carriage, he became even more excited. "Young Master Xiao is back too?" Xiao Qingyuan nodded and asked him, are you here to look for your young master? This guy even specially rode a horse over. It seemed like there was something urgent. Xiao Qingyuan had called Lu Wei over to help. Since he had gone to the Yongning prefecture to look for Gu Yundong, the matters in the village naturally had to be arranged. After all, Lu Wei was the young master of the Lu family. His family's business was so big. Although he was usually silly and unreliable, he had learned a lot since his childhood. It was naturally not a problem for him to manage a small workshop. Coupled with his identity, the villagers were more or less afraid of this kind of young master from the city. Therefore, even if Gu Yundong and Xiao Qingyuan were not in the workshop, no one would dare to cause trouble with Lu Wei around. Lu Wei was overjoyed. Previously, Gu Yundong had not allowed him to be the shopkeeper of the sugar shop. He had been resentful for a long time. This time, Xiao Qingyuan had asked him for help and he agreed without hesitation. He did not even ask for a salary. Now that he had been living in Yongfu village for more than half a month, old Master Lu was furious. He didn't want to do his own family's business and didn't want to get involved, and yet he was doing well in other people's workshops. Was this really his son? When Luan heard this, he suddenly reacted and knocked his head. Look at me, I almost forgot. I did come to look for our young master for something important, but speaking of which, this matter is also related to Miss Gu. Gu Yundong was stunned. What happened? Luan was indignant. It's all because of the people from Dongyi Academy. Dongyi Academy? This name sounds familiar. Gu Yundong rubbed her chin and thought for a while. The corners of Lu An's mouth twitched. Miss Gu, have you forgotten? Previously, a teacher brought a few students to Master Qin's school. When Master Qin was not around, they even blocked Mrs. Qin and Miss Qin at the door. In the end, you saw it, Miss Gu. Not only did you scold them badly, but that teacher also fainted from anger. Gu Yundong blinked. Why did Lu An's words make her sound so cruel? Not only her, but Mao, Shen Sitian, and Bian Yuanji also looked at her in shock. It turns out that not only are you good at fighting, but you are also good at talking. You could actually make someone faint? And the other party was a master who had read a lot of books? What exactly did you say? Gu Yundong coughed lightly and said sternly, I couldn't bear to see them bullying the weak with numbers, so I was fighting for justice. What's with your gazes? Everyone nodded. I believe you. Gu Yundong was speechless. She turned her head and glared at Luan. She asked in an unfriendly tone, then what happened to Dongyi Academy? Could it be that they went to Teacher Qin's academy again? Not really. Chapter 367, Turning Around and Going to the County City uttered by Bexenville. CM Luan felt very innocent. Why was she glaring at him? Wasn't he just afraid that Miss Gu wouldn't be able to remember, so he explained in detail? Dongyi Academy organized a scholarly gathering at the Jinxiu restaurant. They said that they wanted to discuss knowledge with the students in Master Qin's academy and communicate with each other. It sounds nice, but in fact, it's just that the two schools are fighting in the arena, and a few students from each side will compete. Gu Yundong frowned. I remember that the oldest in Qin Wenzheng school is only 12 years old. Is Dongyi Academy planning to bully the weak? That's right. That's what everyone says. That's why Dongyi Academy announced that the students participating in the competition from this academy will also be under the age of 10. Who doesn't know what they're thinking? To meet the requirement of being under the age of 10, they could find some 9-year-olds. Luan was very angry when he said that. Not only were Teacher Qin's students young, but there were also very few of them. There were less than 20 of them in total. However, Dongyi Academy had said that although Teacher Qin had few students, Teacher Qin's requirements for disciples were especially strict. Therefore, his students were all talented and smart prodigies. To be honest, Dongyi Academy was at a disadvantage. They had never seen such a shameless person. When scholars were shameless, nobody could compare to them. Where's Qin Wenzheng? Xiao Qingyuan asked. Luan pulled a long face. They only dared to be so arrogant when Mr. Qin wasn't around. 2 days ago, Mr. Qin left Fengkai County. It seems like there's something urgent. He hasn't returned yet. They were taking advantage of him. Gu Yundong thought about Qin Wenzheng's identity and found it easy to understand the sudden situation. That's why you're in such a hurry to look for your young master. Could it be that Lu Yi is also involved? The corners of Lu An's mouth twitched. Then, he looked at her sympathetically and said, "It's not just our second young master. Miss' younger brother is at Jinshu restaurant now. Moreover, Dongyi Academy specifically asked him to participate in one of the competitions. They probably found out that he's your younger brother. They had suffered a loss at Gu Yundong's hands, and now they were trying to get it back from Yunshu. How could that be?" Gu Yundong could not help but laugh. Was there something wrong with the people of Dongyi Academy? She suddenly said to Mao, who was driving, "Turn around and go to the county city." Now? Yes. Gu Yundong nodded. She thought for a moment and said, Go to the Gu house first and bring my mother, Sitian, and Yung back. Luan knows the location. He's going to look for his young master. Let him tell Aunt Ku that I'm back. You should rest at home first. Go and the others said weakly, "Can we go to that restaurant together?" That's right. Miss, we can go and cheer for you. Didn't they say that the little master is only 6 years old? What if he gets bullied? We can go and help him. Gu Yundong was speechless. They were all scholars and used pens and mouths to fight. She turned around and saw that Shinsidian and Yung were also looking forward to it. Without asking, she knew that they wanted to follow her to watch the show. Madame Yang seemed to understand. She grabbed Gu Yundong's hand and asked, "Is someone bullying Shu?" "I'll go, I'll protect him." "All right, let's go then." Gu Yundong waved at Luan, "Then we'll go first. You can come back after informing your young master. Also, tell Aunt Ku that we're back. We'll go home later." Luan only had time to say yes before the 2 carriages turned around and left. He could only run to his young master. Chapter 368, As Long as You're Happy, uttered by Bexenville. CM Lu Wei was supervising work in the courtyard of the workshop. He had been very fond of coming here recently. It was not only because he felt a sense of accomplishment, but also because he could hear all kinds of gossip from the neighboring villages and the town. He could come over with a teapot and sit by the side and listen all day. The villagers in the workshop were originally a little afraid of him. They worked extra hard the moment he arrived and did not dare to say a word. Later on, they slowly got to know each other better before speaking freely. Moreover, they realized that young Master Lu actually liked to listen to gossip, so they racked their brains, even thinking of something that happened a few years ago. Lu Wei saw that they were skilled and did not slack off. He was also very easy to talk to. Unfortunately, the workshop would stop in a few days. The sugarcane harvesting season was almost over, and even the stock was about to run out. He could only regretfully close the shop first. Just as he was feeling dejected, he saw Luan rushing over. "Young master, something happened." He told Lu Wei about what happened at Dongyi Academy. When Lu Wei heard this, he pulled him and ran away without saying a word. "I knew that those poor scholars were indignant and hated Brother Qin. They would come and cause trouble sooner or later. Last time, they blocked Mrs. Qin at the door and almost caused her to be injured. Of course, Qin Wenzheng had to avenge them after that. He went to the Dongyi Academy and scolded them until they couldn't even raise their heads, especially that teacher. He was punished by the acting dean of the academy and didn't earn anything for the month. After holding it in for more than half a year, they finally found an opportunity. Moreover, they even used the name of a scholarly gathering to bully the children. Lu Wei cursed Dongyi Academy in his heart, but he did not stop. Luan originally wanted to go to the Gu residence to inform Aunt Ku that Miss Gu was back, but Lu Wei did not give him a chance. What are you waiting for? Go to the Lu residence first and get more people. Otherwise, it'll be at a disadvantage if we quarrel later. I'll go to Jinxiu restaurant to take a look first. Luan was pushed onto the horse and walked far away before finding an opportunity to say, Young master, I bumped into Miss Gu and young master Xiao at the entrance of Yongfu village just now. They're back. After hearing about the Dongyi Academy, they left first and have already gone to the restaurant. Lu Wei almost lost his grip on the reins. He suddenly turned around. Those two are back. Then, could he still come over to listen to the gossip that would be gone in a few days? Luan nodded. Lu Wei felt a little regretful, but he quickly became excited again. Alright, then there's no need to go to the Lu family to call for help. The Gu girl definitely won't let Yunshu suffer. Luan was speechless. Young master, you actually placed all your hopes on a woman who has yet to reach adulthood. Don't you feel ashamed? Lu Wei was not ashamed. They'd been gone for a few months and finally came back. I don't know if they brought me any gifts. If it's too expensive, do you think I should accept it or not? If I accept it, I'll have to think about what gift to give back. It's troublesome, too troublesome. Luan, what do you think of the painting in my study as a gift? Luan didn't want to say a word. Young master, as long as you're happy, anything is fine. Gu Yundong and the rest were very fast. Before long, they returned to Fengkai County and arrived at the entrance of Jinxiu restaurant. Previously, she had said firmly that Yunshu would definitely not appear here if he studied hard in school. She did not expect to be slapped in the face immediately. The staff of the Jinxiu restaurant knew her and her relationship with the Lu family. He immediately led them around the crowd and brought them upstairs to the best private room. Chapter 369, Walk Proudly uttered by Bexenville. It was already very lively downstairs. Gu Yundong looked down and did not see Yunshu and Lu Yi. He asked the waiter, where are your second young master and the rest? Replying to Miss, the students from the two academies are staying in the other rooms. The competition will not start for another hour. Second young master's academy's room is the second room on the left. Miss, do you want to go over and take a look? No need. Serve us food first. We've been traveling for most of the day. I'm exhausted. Alright, the shop assistant replied and immediately went downstairs. After they left, Shinsidian asked in a low voice, Yundong, are we really not going to take a look first? Gu Yundong lowered her eyes and thought for a moment. Let's wait for a while. If they are preparing for the competition and we disturb them, it will only cause trouble. She felt that Yunshu was not an impulsive person. Lu Yi was more like a little adult. Since he had agreed, he should be confident. At this moment, in the second room on the left, there were more than 10 children standing or sitting. The oldest was only 12 years old. His name was Yi Junkin. He was solemnly patting Gu Yunshu's shoulder. Yunshu, you're the youngest here and the last to enter the school. Coupled with your sister, they will definitely target you. However, don't be afraid. We just have to win 2 of the 3 matches. Gu Yunshu had only been in school for less than half a year. In fact, the earliest students here came to the school 2 years ago. Lu Yi was only half a month earlier than Gu Yunshu. However, the difference was that Lu Yi was the young master of the Lu family. Even before he entered the school, he had been enlightened by his family. Compared to Gu Yunshu, who had fled thousands of miles to this place without enough food and clothes, his starting point was much higher. Although Gu Yunshu could read before he entered the school, he could only read. He had not even memorized the 3-character classic. When Yi Junkin thought of this, he could not help but sigh again. Unfortunately, those who can participate in the competition must be under 10 years old. I'm not qualified. Gu Yunshu clenched his small fists and snorted coldly. I'm not afraid. My elder sister said that we have to treat our enemies as cruelly as if hailstones had smashed through their heads. Moreover, we are not allowed to give them a chance to fight back. They can come over and see if I can beat them to death. The children were speechless. Junkin rubbed his forehead. Yunshu, we're fighting in literature, not martial arts. Even if it was martial arts, with this kid's small body, he could not defeat them. Gu Yunshu nodded. Of course I know. I'm not afraid of literary battles. My elder sister can make their teachers faint. As her younger brother, I definitely can't ruin my elder sister's prestige. Even if I can't surpass her, I have to let them know that like sister, like brother. The little children were speechless. It was actually fine for such prestige to break. Don't cry. I'm very confident. My elder sister said that it's very important to compete in aura with others. When we walk out later, we have to at least raise our heads, puff out our chests, and suck in our stomachs. We have to walk like we don't care about our families or anything. The children were speechless. It was better for you not to talk to yourself. If your elder sister knew that you didn't care about your family, she would probably beat you to death. Everyone finally realized that this person was a big fan of his sister. He probably still didn't know what kind of competition he was going to face, right? A sobbing sound suddenly came from the corner. It's all my fault. If it weren't for me, we wouldn't have come here to compete. Chapter 370:1 AM Very confident uttered by Bexenville. The children looked at Xiaoyu, who was squatting on the ground. He was only 7 years old, and his face was filled with self-blame. If it weren't for the fact that I couldn't stand their provocation and agreed to this gathering on impulse, you wouldn't have been implicated by me and gotten involved in this mess. In the end, it might damage the reputation of our academy and made Sir suffer humiliation. How can you be blamed for this? Junkin was the oldest person here after all, and he acted like a big brother. You fell into a trap to protect our little junior sister. We can only blame Dongyi Academy for being too despicable. Dongyi Academy was deliberately trying to tarnish Qin Anning's reputation in front of the impulsive Xiaoyu. Qin Anning had a volatile personality and would rush out in less than 15 minutes of silence to play until she was drenched in sweat. Her personality was more like a boy's. They said that she was a country bumpkin and did not have the temperament of a lady from a wealthy family. At the same time, they questioned that if Master Qin could not even teach his daughter well, how could he bring up a knowledgeable and qualified student? When Xiaoyu heard them continuously insult his junior sister and teacher, how could he endure it? In the end, there was this scholarly exchange gathering, but it was actually just a competition between students under the age of 10 from the two schools. Xiaoyu blamed himself, but the others felt that he had not done anything wrong. They all comforted him not to think too much. Gu Yunshu patted him on the shoulder and said, "At that time, any man would agree." "What man? You're just a 6-year-old kid. Don't say such things." Junkin pulled Xiaoyu up. "Alright, now is not the time to talk about this. The competition will start soon. Let's go through the process again." As he spoke, he glanced at Gu Yunshu. The latter blinked. Why was this guy looking at him? He was very confident. Junkin coughed lightly. He held a piece of paper in his hand and said, "There will be 3 matches this time. For the first round, we will set the question and name the candidate from the other side. We will let Lu Yi take the lead and compete in chess." Lu Yi's chess skills were very good. Even the teacher said that he was calm at such a young age and was neither arrogant nor rash. Those who had studied chess for more than 10 years were probably not his match. Therefore, even though Lu Yi was only 7 years old, it was most suitable for him to go on stage. After all, the other party's students were not even 10 years old. Furthermore, they were the ones who designated the participant, so the chances of winning were very high. Let's have a good start in the first round. The second round will be difficult. The other party will set the question and the participating student on our side. Everyone turned to look at Gu Yunshu. Gu Yunshu felt a chill run down his spine. Why are you looking at me? Yi Junkin said, the other party will most likely point at you in the second round. We don't know what question they set. Yunshu, if it's too difficult, just give up. Actually, it's not embarrassing. You've only studied for half a year. They were bullying you in the first place. If you lose this round, we still have the third round. So, don't feel too pressured and don't be affected by them. We have to have a strong heart. We can't be unable to recover from this setback, understand? Yi Junkin did not fully explain the matter. The Dongyi Academy had paid a lot of attention to Gu Yunshu because of what happened to his elder sister last time. Yi Junkin was afraid that when he lost, they might say some nasty words to avenge their teacher's humiliation. However, Gu Yunshu was still young. When the time came, he would be dealt a huge blow. What if he got tired of studying? Chapter 371. I'll find someone to stabilize the situation uttered by Bexenville. CM Louis thought so too. He put his hands behind his back and said to Gu Yunshu cautiously, why don't you pretend to be sick? That's not good. Yunshu was too energetic when he came in just now. It's too fake to pretend to be sick now, a little kid said. Louis was silent. He regretted not letting the waiters carry him in when he came in. Yi Junkin waved his hand. That won't do. We can only compete. As long as Yunshu treats it normally. Everyone thought of Gu Yunshu's ability to comfort himself by talking to himself. He should probably be able to treat it normally. Therefore, the most important thing now is the third round. The third round will be set by the County Academy Overseer. He won't specify who will participate. When the time comes, we'll see who's good at solving the questions set by the Overseer. Although he said that, the 12-year-old Yi Junkin was thinking more. This County Academy Overseer was invited by Dongyi Academy. Although he was not biased in front of everyone, who knew if he would reveal the question to Dongyi Academy in private? It was a pity that the headmaster was not around. Otherwise, they would not be able to do whatever they wanted. Yi Junkin patted his face. He could not think about such a depressing thing. Now that things had come to this, he could only give it his all. He exhaled and clenched his fists. We'll definitely win. The other children were stunned for a moment before they suddenly laughed and shouted together, we'll definitely win. A childish voice suddenly sounded, causing the outside to fall silent for a moment. Even Gu Yundong could vaguely hear it. The dishes from the Jinxiu restaurant were already placed in front of her. When she heard the sound, she was stunned for a moment before she smiled. At this moment, the door was suddenly pushed open. Immediately after, Lu Wei rushed over with a smile. You're really back. Hey, why didn't you tell me in advance so that I could pick you up and welcome you back, right? Oh right, did you bring me any gifts? I don't want a lot. Anything is fine. Gu Yundong and Xiao Qingyuan looked at each other and silently turned their heads away. When Lu Wei saw this, he was about to explode. You didn't bring me anything? All right. I brought something for you. It's in the carriage. Gu Yundong waved her hand. Did you rush over just to ask about the gift? I thought you were concerned about your brother. Lu Wei was stunned for a moment. When he heard that there was a gift, he was relieved and wasn't in a hurry to look at it. The surprise had to wait until the end. He sat down and drank a cup of tea. Of course I'm concerned about my brother. I didn't expect that little old man to cause such a scene. I just got someone to help. He called Lu Yi little old man. After Lu Wei heard the rules of the competition from Luan, he also had the idea that the County Academy Overseer might be bribed. Therefore, he still got someone to send a message to Duan Jingyuan, who was in the County Academy, and asked him to come over quickly to stabilize the situation. Therefore, he came a little late and only arrived when the others were eating. The competition hasn't started yet. Have you seen your Yunshu? Let's go and take a look together. It'll give our little old man some confidence so that he won't tremble in fear. If he loses the competition later, he'll have to cry under my blanket. Lu Wei couldn't be bothered to eat. He stood up and was about to leave. Unexpectedly, Xiao Qingyuan pulled him back. Just as he was about to ask, he saw Gu Yundong nod her chin and point at a corner below. Look there. Looks like we don't have to worry. Huh? Lu Wei replied and quickly looked over. Chapter 372, Gu Yunshu was squeezed out by Bexenville. There were people coming and going downstairs, but there were two people sitting in an inconspicuous corner. One of them lowered his head and covered half of his face with a fan. Lu Wei didn't recognize him. However, he knew who the person sitting next to him was. Even though this person had her head slightly lowered, Lu Wei could still tell that this was Madame Gu. Then, the person sitting next to her was. Hey, Brother Qin, so he's here too. This gathering was decided at the last minute yesterday afternoon. Madame Gu knew the ins and outs of the matter and also knew that those people actually made use of her daughter. She was furious. At that time, she packed up and went to the prefectural city to look for Qin Wenzheng. Others might not know what Qin Wenzheng had been busy with for the past 2 days, but as the person beside him, Madame Gu knew. At this moment, the couple had just entered and only had time to take a sip of tea to moisten their throats. Madame Gu asked a waiter and knew that the students were still in the private room on the second floor. When she saw her husband sitting there, she could not help but ask, "Don't you have to go up?" Qin Wenzheng said, "No need. Let's take a look first. I also want to know how these children are doing. Even if Dongyi Academy doesn't cause trouble this time, I want to find an opportunity to do so. After all, they've been studying in my own school. They don't know how vast the sky is outside. This is a good training for them." Madame Gu was speechless. To think that she had rushed over in such a hurry to find him. Just as he finished speaking, there was suddenly a commotion on the other side. Someone said loudly, "The master of Dongyi Academy is out." Everyone turned to look at the person who came out. Gu Yundong was also looking downstairs. When she saw that the person who came out with a smile was actually Master Wei, who had pretended to faint after being scolded by her, she immediately smiled. This was a cockroach that could not be killed. Master Wei stood on a specially renovated stage in the restaurant and looked at the guests present. In the middle, there were onlookers who were watching the show. Of course, most of them were scholars. There were also people from the Dongyi Academy. They were all called over by him. However, there were not many of them. Others probably did not think much of this competition between students below the age of 10. However, he had no choice. The oldest in Qin Wenzheng's school was only 12 years old. It would be embarrassing for him to send a preparation scholar in their 20s to compete with the kids. Of course, there were also students from other academies and even schools in other towns. Teacher Wei coughed lightly. Although today's gathering is a competition, it's more of a sparring session. It doesn't matter which side loses. What's important is what you may learn. Most of them didn't think much of it. Lu Wei, who was upstairs, snorted coldly as he munched on a chicken drumstick. So what if you're bullying them? You even have to find a dignified excuse. How embarrassing. They're out. They're out. Isn't that Yunshu? Bian Yuanji suddenly pointed downstairs and shouted. Lu Wei blinked. When did a child appear in the private room? Whoa, so many people? When did they arrive? Just as Lu Wei was about to ask, he saw Gu Yundong's lips twitch violently as she looked downstairs. The others were also laughing silently. He looked down suspiciously and saw Gu Yunshu standing with his head held high and his chest puffed out. He looked straight ahead, as if he was about to go to the battlefield, and he was the last in the line. Moreover, because he was short, no one could see him. The crowd behind him squeezed him out of the line. Chapter 373, You're clearly short-utted by Bexenville. CM Yunshu was dumbfounded. He swayed twice before stabilizing himself. He glared at the team that was a meter away from him, his little face squeezed into a ball. Lu Yi, who was still standing at the second-last place, felt that something was wrong. He turned his head but did not see anyone. Hence, he quickly squeezed over and held his hand as he followed. Yunshu, don't walk around. There are many people here. If you're alone, what if you're kidnapped by the Dongyi Academy? Teacher Wei from Dongyi Academy, who had just walked over to greet them pretentiously, was speechless. We are scholars. Scholars, not robbers. You are ruining the reputation of our academy. He was so angry that he did not want to speak, but Gu Yunshu still nodded seriously. I know. I was pushed out just now. I suspect that this is Dongyi Academy's scheme. Fortunately, you discovered it early. Master Wei, you're the one who's short. When Lu Yi heard this, he tightened his grip on Lu Wei's hand. Lu Wei, who was upstairs, laughed out loud and almost fell out of the window. Xiao Qingyuan couldn't stand it anymore. He grabbed his robe and pulled him back. Ha 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 ha. Lu Wei couldn't stop at all. Did you see Master Wei's expression? Although I didn't hear what our little old man said, I don't think it was anything good. Ha 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 ha, and Yunshu was actually squeezed out. Look at his expression. I'm dying of laughter. Gu Yundong glanced at him and said with a fake smile, continue to smile. I'll convey everything you said to Lu Yi and Yunshu. Burp. Lu Wei's laughter stopped abruptly. I'm joking, I'm joking. Don't tell them. What if those two children cry? He quickly changed the topic. Hey, who are these people? I've never seen them before. Gu Yundong briefly introduced them. This is my cousin, Bian Yuanji. This is Shen Sidian. The four people over there are Ah Mao, Ah Shu, Ah Go, and Ah Zhu. Lu Wei's forehead twitched. Could their names be more creative? However, he did not seem to have seen the Gu family's father. There was only a cousin. It seemed that he had not been found. Lu Wei sighed inwardly. He wanted to comfort her, but he felt that she didn't need it, so he simply turned his head to look at the situation downstairs. At this moment, the students from both sides had already gone on stage. The students on Master Qin's side ranged from tall to short. It was obvious that they were of all ages. On the other hand, although Dongyi Academy was also filled with young students, they were at most 1 or 2 years apart in age. There were definitely no children below the age of 8. Discussions were going on below the stage, but Master Wei was scoffing in his heart. They had agreed on a competition between people under the age of 10. If the other school could not find anyone old enough, they could not blame him, right? Teacher Wei coughed lightly and said, the rules have been said before. There will be 3 competitions. The first 2 competitions will be set by the 2 sides in turns. The third competition will be hosted by educator Lu from the county school. Now, let's begin. The people on both sides left the stage. The surrounding students saw that not only was there a teacher accompanying Dongyi Academy, but there were also older students. Those students below the age of 10 had them as their backing. All of them were full of confidence and high spirits. On the other side, everyone sighed. The headmaster was not around. The oldest was only 12 years old. They looked like a group of weak, pitiful, and helpless children. Yi Junkin took a deep breath and turned to ask Lu Yi, are you ready? Yes. Lu Yi nodded with a tense expression. No problem. Chapter 374, Learning from Big Sister Utted by Bexenville. CM with that, Lu Yi strode forward. With his hands behind his back, he said in an old-fashioned manner, our first match is chess. I'll compete. Junkin took out the chess pieces and placed them on the high platform. Dongyi Academy had no objections and let Lu Yi choose his opponent. Lu Yi looked at the students and finally pointed to the last one. Him. The teacher had said that chess players had to be calm and patient. They had to slowly figure out the strategy for the game. Otherwise, they would lose everything if they made a single mistake. Hence, after looking around, Lu Yi chose the person who looked the most impatient. That person also walked out of the group and stood on the stage with his hands behind his back. He and Lu Yi greeted each other and sat on the two sides of the chessboard. One of them held a black piece while the other held a white piece. The person who acted as the referee was the overseer. When it came to chess, winning was winning. The main role of the referee was to prevent people from regretting their moves or spending too much time. However, they were all self-proclaimed scholars here, so they naturally did a good job on the surface. They would not regret their moves or go back on their word. Lu Yi was mentally prepared, but he did not expect the other party to admit defeat within half an hour. I really don't have much talent in chess. I'm destined to lose, so I won't waste everyone's time. Let's move on to the next game. He was straightforward and generous, admitting defeat readily. On the contrary, many people felt that this person had the bearing to lose. Lu Yi looked at the chessboard and felt like he was holding back his anger. He couldn't even spit it out. This person's chess skills were indeed average, but he could clearly last for a period of time. However, if they continued to play, Dongyi Academy would only lose even more miserably. It might even highlight Lu Yi's superb chess skills at such a young age. How could Teacher Wei allow them to step on his students' weaknesses to improve their reputation? Therefore, he decided to surrender halfway. After all, the second round was the focus of his preparations. Upstairs, Lu Wei frowned. The other party did it on purpose, right? Our little old man looks very unhappy. Gu Yundong lowered her eyes. It seemed that they were not only going to humiliate the losers, but also the winners. This scholar's scheming made people feel inferior. Downstairs, Madame Gu also frowned. You really don't need to go over? Wenzheng shook his head. No need. Lu Yi will be able to adjust himself soon. As expected, as soon as he finished speaking, Lu Yi pursed his lips and solemnly walked to Gu Yunshu's side. Next, it's up to you. Remember, if the other party is too strong and chooses your weakness, then you should be like that person just now and admit defeat quickly. In any case, Yunshu was the youngest. No one would laugh at him. However, the effect might not be too good after copying Dongyi Academy's method. Everyone might even find it boring. No one wanted to see someone admit defeat so early. The first round was fine, but if the second round was still like this, they would be criticized. Gu Yunshu clenched his fists. I won't admit defeat. At most, he would scold the other party until they fainted. He would learn from eldest sister. As expected, a student from Dongyi Academy chose Gu Yunshu as his opponent. There was even a malicious smile on his face as he looked at him provocatively. Yunshu walked up the stage calmly. The other party was taller than him. He puffed up his cheeks and was a little angry. When he looked up, his neck was tired, so he decided to keep his eyes lowered. Hence, the other party's provocative gaze was ignored by him. Chapter 375, Comparing in Sketch. Edited by Bexenville. CM Master Wei looked at the two of them and said with a smile, the second round is a competition of painting. Painting? Junkin and Lu Yi looked at each other. It was over. Yunshu was still learning the basics and had just drawn it twice. It was obvious that the other party was very skilled. Master Wei saw that they were anxious and seemed to be unsatisfied. He continued, moreover, our painting this time will be different from before. Our academy has recently taught us a new painting method. It can draw people vividly, as if they are directly copied. As he spoke, he looked at Gu Yunshu. I heard that your teacher has been learning this painting technique recently. I believe he has already taught you. Since everyone hasn't been learning for long, this competition is naturally the fairest. Yi Junkin was a little annoyed. They had never learned any new painting techniques. This Master Wei was talking to himself and even wanted to step on them. He was simply detestable. The other students wanted to speak, but Yi Junkin stopped them. There's no need to make meaningless arguments. Otherwise, we'll fall before the competition even begins. He pursed his lips and said in a low voice, let's see what the new painting method they're talking about first. They could not shout at this moment, or they would only embarrass themselves further. Looking at Master Wei's expression, it was obvious that he was waiting for them to refute. Now that he saw that they were silent, there was still a trace of regret on his face. Teacher Wei could only turn his attention to Gu Yunshu and ask, do you have any questions? Yunshu shook her head, full of confidence. No problem. Not far away, Qin Wenzheng sighed. Newborn calves are not afraid of tigers. This kid is just like his sister. Isn't he fine? From the looks of it, he won't collapse even if he loses. Although Madame Gu was worried, she was still amused by Gu Yunshu. Teacher Wei snorted secretly and asked someone to bring the items up. 2 tables, 2 chairs, a few sheets of paper, 2 charcoal pencils. Gone. The people below looked at each other in confusion. Painting, brush, ink, paper, and inkstone were always the most basic equipment when it came to painting. Now, there was only brush and paper, and it was a charcoal brush? Gu Yunshu touched his chin and looked at the familiar thing. He sat down properly. Master Wei said, today, you will use this charcoal brush to paint. How about painting me? He then asked the waiter for a chair and sat upright on it. He placed his hands on the armrests of the chair and looked straight ahead, seeming unfathomable. The students from Dongyi Academy nodded. Fine. With that, he sat down and pondered for a moment with the charcoal brush in his hand before starting to work. Gu Yundong, who was in the private room on the 2nd floor, was shocked. The new drawing method they were talking about was sketching. She narrowed her eyes slightly. So someone had already figured it out on their own. She just didn't know how effective it would be. The people downstairs were all craning their necks to look up at the high platform. There were also people whispering, especially the scholars, who seemed even more anxious. On the high platform, only the students of the Dongyi Academy were drawing. One moment, he was painting, and the next moment, he was looking at Teacher Wei. It looked like he was quite serious. Gu Yunshu did not move. No one knew what he was thinking, but he would occasionally look at the other party's painting. On the other hand, Yi Junkin and Lu Yi were a little anxious. Since he was not doing anything, why not just admit defeat? Yi Junkin's expression was serious. Just as he was about to speak, Lu Yi suddenly tugged at him. Look at Yunshu. Yi Junkin was stunned. He looked up and saw that Gu Yunshu had already picked up a charcoal brush and was lowering his head to paint. Chapter 376, Don't Move Adulterous by Bexenville. CM Yunshu's painting method was different from that of the Dongyi Academy. He first drew a few simple strokes before continuing to draw lines. Short straight lines, long straight lines, horizontal lines, vertical lines, diagonal lines, and various other lines crossed. Everyone shook their heads when they saw this. This is because he can't draw it. He's starting to mess around. I don't think the teacher in his school has taught him at all. The little boy just now has been looking at the drawings of his opponent. Does he want to learn it now? But the other side doesn't draw like him. So he didn't learn it and started drawing randomly? Teacher Wei turned his head slightly and took a glance as well. He immediately smiled. Gu Yunshu suddenly shouted, Don't move. Since you want to be a model, you have to be professional. Otherwise, it will affect my painting. Am a model? What was that? Everyone's mind was filled with question marks. They didn't quite understand what he meant. However, Mr. Weiss's face was flushed red. Although he did not understand what the model meant, he understood that he was moving around and affecting the kid's painting. He flew into a rage out of humiliation. "You're painting? You're doodling randomly like an expert. Let's see how you end up later." Although he thought so in his heart, he really stopped moving. The student of Dongyi Academy was still focused. In fact, he had already drawn Master Wei before. From the complete lack of resemblance, the lines slowly curved. There were already many drawing papers lying in his bookshelf. Gu Yunshu's lines were almost done. He began to draw slowly and emphasized some areas. Gradually, the originally messy lines were connected, forming his eyes and nose as if they were alive. Like a magic trick, they suddenly became three-dimensional and turned into a face. Hiss, the people nearby couldn't help but widen their eyes. He looked at the painting, then at Master Wei, and then at the painting. They were really the same. Master Wei frowned subconsciously. The whispers in his ears gave him a bad feeling. But he could not move, lest Gu Yunshu lost and blamed it on him. The Dongyi Academy student heard it too. He frowned slightly but did not look in Gu Yundong's direction. It was fine. He was already very familiar with it. How could he lose to this brat? Just a little bit more to finish the drawing. However, Gu Yunshu was faster. He put down the charcoal brush and heaved a sigh of relief. Unexpectedly, when he looked up, everyone was looking at him. Gu Yunshu was suddenly worried. Had he drawn it wrong? He had started learning to sketch since a long time ago. He was very interested in Big Sister's drawing of the structure of the house. At that time, Big Sister had taught him to draw the simplest square wooden box. Later on, he drew pears, vegetables, cups, jars, and various other things. Then, he drew people. However, eldest sister said that this painting could not be spread out and that no one could know that she had taught him. Unless one day, there was someone outside who knew how to draw like this. Today, when he saw the charcoal brush taken out by Dongyi Academy, he had been guessing. Then, when the other party drew the outline, he realized that he could draw outside. Although the order of painting was different and he started from the lines, it didn't matter as long as he drew well. But why was everyone looking at him with burning eyes? Could it be that he had done something wrong? He was a little flustered. What should he do? Finally, Dongyi Academy finished drawing. The other party put down his brush. As the model, Mr. Wei secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He wanted to rush up and take a look, but he had been sitting for too long. His old bones were too stiff to move. Chapter 377, Qin Wenzheng is here uttered by Bexenville. CM It was County Academy overseer who picked up the two paintings and looked at Master Wei with a complicated gaze. He said, "It seems that I don't have to judge. Everyone knows whose painting skills are better." Teacher Wei stood up slowly and raised his chin confidently. However, in the next moment, the overseer's words struck him like a bolt of lightning, almost breaking his bones. "I now announce that the winner is Gu Yunshu." Impossible. Teacher Wei suddenly regained his strength. He strode forward with his stiff legs and walked in front of the County Academy teacher. He snatched the paintings. When he saw Gu Yunshu's painting, his eyes widened in disbelief. How was this possible? Impossible. He had secretly gotten someone to get information from these students. Qin Wenzheng had never taught these people this painting method. He heard that Qin Wenzheng was still thinking about how to do it. Qin Wenzheng would not rashly teach his students things that he had yet to understand. However, looking at Gu Yun's painting, it was obvious that he was very familiar with it. It was impossible for him to draw it so realistically without more than half a year of practice. Educator Lu secretly sighed and took back the two paintings. Today's competition was originally best of 3. Now that teacher Qin's students have already won 2 consecutive rounds, there's no need to start the 3rd round. As he spoke, he cared about Dongyi Academy's reputation and added, however, we agreed that this is just a sparring. Winning or losing doesn't matter. At least everyone present today has seen this very special new painting method. Even I've broadened my horizons and benefited greatly. He laughed as he spoke, but Teacher Wei did not seem to appreciate it. He still could not accept the fact that he had lost 2 rounds in a row. That's impossible. He definitely didn't draw this. He must have. Before he could finish speaking, he was interrupted by a mocking voice from behind. How is it impossible? Under everyone's eyes, could it be that my student cheated? Everyone looked back and saw Qin Wenzheng walking over with a dark expression. Although he looked calm, he was screaming in his heart. Especially when he saw Gu Yunshu's painting, he almost could not stop himself from taking it over for a good look. Yi Junkin and the others surrounded him happily. Master, you are back? Teacher, we won. Qin Wenzheng nodded slightly. Yes, you guys did well. The little kids, who were praised, were so happy that their faces turned red. One had to know that the teacher was usually very serious. It was too difficult to hear praise from him. Qin Wenzheng looked at Teacher Wei again and sneered. Dongyi Academy is indeed dignified. You bullied a group of children when I wasn't in school. In the end, you lost twice to our school. Now, you're starting to go back on your word? I want to ask your dean, are the teachers of Dongyi Academy all people who take advantage of others and bully them without any self-restraint or dignity? Teacher Weiss' face turned green and white, but he could not refute. On the other hand, a group of people quickly walked over from outside the Jinxiu restaurant. The leader was the acting dean of Dongyi Academy. Since Dongyi Academy has lost, we naturally want go back on our word. He walked in front of Qin Wenzheng and bowed deeply. He said apologetically, this matter is my Dongyi Academy's fault. Master Wei made his own decision and urged the students to compete with the other academies in private. He violated the big taboo of our Dongyi Academy. Master Qin, don't worry. Dongyi Academy will definitely give you an explanation. Qin Wenzheng would play a few rounds with him after class and point out things to pay attention to. Therefore, they did not find it strange that Gu Yunshu could draw in a way that they did not know. Qin Wenzheng glanced at them angrily and continued to ask Gu Yunshu, when did you learn it? Gu Yunshu thought for a moment. I have to ask my elder sister if I can tell you. Qin Wenzheng was speechless. I'm your teacher, and you're still keeping it a secret from me? But on second thought, he had first seen this kind of painting on the wanted poster. Even the prefecture magistrate had kept it a secret for the artist, so it was understandable that Gu Yunshu did not say anything. Unfortunately, Gu Yundong was not back yet. Just as he was thinking about it, there was a knock on the door. Qin Wenzheng frowned. The students downstairs must have refused to give up and wanted to ask about the painting. Seriously, he hadn't even asked it yet. These people were so annoying. Qin Wenzheng opened the door impatiently. What do you want? I'm busy. Chapter 379, Siblings Meet Utted by Bexenville. CM the person standing at the door smiled. Master Qin, long time no see. Qin Wenzheng widened his eyes in shock. You, Gu Yundong? You're back? When Gu Yunshu heard the familiar name, he hurried out of the private room. When he saw his eldest sister, his eyes lit up. Big sis, you're back. When did you come back? Why are you here? Did you see my competition just now? Wasn't it great? I listened to you well. When others came to bully me, I was imposing. He was overjoyed. After nagging for a while, his eyes turned slightly red again. Big sister, I was obedient and took good care of little sister. Every day, she ate well, drank well, and wore warm clothes. She didn't fall sick. The teacher said that I've improved a lot in my studies. Aunt Gu also said that I'm like an older brother. I just missed you and mother and looked forward to your return every day. The child was extremely obedient. Gu Yundong's heart ached and softened. After not seeing each other for a few months, Gu Yundong realized that this kind of kinship was really heartwarming and unforgettable. She squatted down and gently stroked his head. Yes, I know. Yunshu is very obedient and sensible. You're a little man now. Gu Yunshu puffed out his chest and nodded vigorously. He grinned. After speaking to Gu Yundong, he looked at the person behind her and immediately threw himself into Madame Yang's arms. Mother. Ah, Shu is great. Madame Yang picked him up, her eyes red. Gu Yunshu smiled even more happily. However, when he looked around and did not see Gu Dajiang, the smile on his lips could not help but droop. Sister, didn't you find father? Gu Yundong secretly took a deep breath. Father is not in Qingan Prefecture, but don't worry. Father is fine. He will be found. At the very least, everyone in Qingan Prefecture who saw Gu Dajiang said that he had left the city gate safely. If he could survive the disaster and remain safe despite the chaos in Qingan Prefecture, he would definitely be fine in the future. When she saw that Gu Yunshu still looked a little sad, she quickly brought the timid and uneasy Bian Yuanji over. Look who this is. Bian Yuanji was very nervous. He had regarded Gu Yunshu as his best friend, but Yunshu seemed to have many classmates and friends now. They were all knowledgeable and capable friends. He suddenly felt inferior and helpless. Madame Yang had already put Gu Yunshu down. Hearing this, he could not help but take a few more glances at Bian Yuanji. After a while, his eyes lit up. He rushed over and grabbed his hand. Yuanji, right, cousin Yuanji? Your cousin Yuanji? Shu, it's me. Bian Yuanji was very happy that he still remembered him. Gu Yundong smiled. Your cousin Yuanji will be staying with us from now on. He just came and is not familiar with Yongfu village or Fengkai county. You can bring him around later. Gu Yunshu nodded vigorously. Leave it to me. He patted his chest and happily introduced Bian Yuanji to Lu Yi and the rest. Gu Yundong heaved a sigh of relief. With Yunshu around, Yuanzi's temperament should become more cheerful. But in the next moment, Gu Yundong suddenly felt someone staring at her. She suddenly turned around and met Qin Wenzheng's covetous gaze. Gu Yundong was speechless. Why did she feel that her life was in danger? Chapter 380, That Painter Was Actually Gu Yundong? Edited by Bexenville. CM Gu Yundong was not the only one who felt the danger. Even Xiao Qingyuan could not help but frown and stand between them. Perhaps only Madame Gu knew what her husband's gaze meant. She touched her forehead and walked over to talk to Gu Yundong. When did Yundong come back? I just came back. I heard about what happened here, so I came over to take a look. I haven't returned home yet. Gu Yundong said as she walked in. However, Qin Wenzheng kept following her, looking like he wanted to say something but hesitated. Gu Yundong could not take it anymore. Master Qin, if you have something to say, just say it. Well. Qin Wenzheng was still a little embarrassed. After all, this matter was actually quite difficult. The prefecture magistrate was so tight-lipped that he refused to reveal a single word. Wasn't it making things difficult for Gu Yundong if he asked her? However, he could not help but ask in a low voice, who taught Yunshu how to draw? Gu Yundong was stunned. She did not expect him to look at her with such a burning gaze just to ask this. The corners of her mouth twitched. Suddenly, she seemed to have thought of something and asked, Do many people know how to draw like this now? Qin Wenzheng was a smart person and quickly reacted. He immediately nodded and said, "Indeed, many people have already learned it. I know of 3 painters in the prefecture capital. They have been practicing since they saw the wanted poster back then. Therefore, you don't have to worry about exposing that painter and bringing him danger." "You're painting too?" Qin Wenzheng admitted straightforwardly, "Yes, and my painting skills are better than those painters in the prefecture capital. It's just that I keep feeling that something is missing. When I saw Yunshu's painting today, I suddenly felt enlightened. However, I can tell that he's still a beginner after all. He's still too young." Gu Yundong fell into deep thought. Since the painters in the prefectural city knew how to do it, even if their drawings were average, at least if she created a missing person notice, it would not seem unique. This time, she wouldn't have to specially draw other missing persons to hide her identity like she did in Qingan Prefecture. Later, she would draw portraits of eldest aunt and the others and paste them. The chances of finding them would more or less increase. "Gu Yundong." Qin Wenzheng's angry voice suddenly sounded in her ears. She quickly turned her head and saw that his expression was dark and ugly. Gu Yundong blinked and asked softly, "Did you say anything just now?" Qin Wenzheng sneered. Her brother was still a student under him. As a family member, she actually did not have any reverence for him. It was simply outrageous. It was Xiao Qingyuan who said, "Master Qin asked you, who is the master who taught Yunshu to paint?" "It's me." There was nothing she couldn't say now. Qin Wenzheng was so angry that he laughed. You really take yourself seriously." Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows and smiled. Qin Wenzheng frowned and took a few more glances at her. Thinking of Yunshu's technique, he hesitated for a long time before asking uncertainly, "Was it really you?" "If you don't believe me, ask Yunshu." Qin Wenzheng gasped. The person he had tried so hard to find was actually Gu Yundong. This person was right in front of him, but he actually didn't know. Qin Wenzheng rubbed his chest. He felt that he had to calm down. After a while, he raised his head again. His eyes were shining as he looked at Gu Yundong excitedly. "Tell me, what's so special about this painting method? What's the best way to start and what's the main point?" "Sure." Gu Yundong smiled. "But if you want me to teach you, there will be conditions." Chapter 381, Opening Gifts. Qin Wenzheng was speechless. He knew this girl had never known what it meant to be at a disadvantage. He was annoyed. "I'm your brother's teacher. Those are 2 different things. When you took Yunshu in as a student, didn't you take a fancy to his learning talent?" Gu Yundong said. "Friendship is friendship, and business is business." The corners of Qin Wenzheng's mouth twitched. He rubbed his temples and scolded Gu Yundong in his heart. However, he slowly calmed down. "All right, tell me." Gu Yundong was satisfied. She pointed at Bian Yuanji, who was holding Gu Yunshu's hand and chatting with others. "Taken my cousin too." Qin Wenzheng frowned and turned to look at the timid and inferior child. He thought for a moment and said, "It's not impossible, but if he's stupid and can't keep up with his studies, then you can't blame me. He cannot read like Yunshu, right?" That was true. Yunshu had Gu Dajiang. Although eldest Aunt Gu had also learned a few words when she was young, she could not learn a lot in that environment. Moreover, she had forgotten most of it. After Bian Yuanji was born, eldest Aunt Gu had probably only taught him less than 10 words. He did not have a foundation like Yunshu's, but Gu Yundong still felt that she should send him to school. Now that the conditions allowed it, reading and literacy were the most basic things for her. "Just teach him, Master Qin. It's not like I want him to take the high scholar examination and return as an honorable scholar. Studying can make people wise. It's better than knowing nothing." There was a rare hint of praise in Qin Wenzheng's eyes when he looked at her. There were too few people in this world who had such thoughts. For example, which of these little kids in front of him didn't study for the imperial examination? When it came to Gu Yundong, she really studied for the sake of studying. Alright, since we've made a deal, you can tell me about the problem with the painting, right? Madame Gu couldn't stand it anymore and pulled him back. Yundong has just returned to Fengkai County and hasn't even come home yet, but you're already asking her all sorts of questions. At least let her go home to see her family. We can talk about other things after resting. Only then did Qin Wenzheng react. He coughed lightly and said, "Alright, I don't mind waiting 2 more days anyway. The competition here has ended. Take Yunshu home first. Then well leave." Gu Yundong also wanted to go home, so she called out to Yunshu. The latter immediately bade farewell to his friends and held Bian Yuanzi's hand. From the beginning to the end, he had never let go of his hand. Their palms were sweaty. However, Bian Yuanzi was very happy. The uneasiness of meeting a friend he had not seen in a long time in a strange place seemed to have been soothed. Shen-Sitian, Cat and the rest were still in their original room. When Gu Yundong returned, he happened to see Lu Wei asking a few people about what he had seen and heard along the way. At the same time, he wanted to find out what gifts Gu Yundong and the rest had prepared for him. Gu Yundong was speechless. "Your brother is next door. Why don't you go and comfort him? Are you his elder brother?" She ignored Lu Wei and introduced the others to Yunshu. Then, under his curious gaze, she asked Mao to take a box from the carriage and handed it to Lu Wei. Then, she left him behind and the group returned to Yongfu village happily. Lu Wei held the gift box and didn't care if they left or not. He sat in the private room and opened it happily. She explained, "Someone said that he saw you guys coming back, but you turned around and left as soon as you entered the village." Later on, Luan called young Master Lu away. "I thought that something might have delayed you in the county city and you would come back later." When Gu Yundong heard this, she understood that Luan did not report to the Gu family. She was so angry that she gritted her teeth, but she smiled and explained. Madame Yang also came forward and happily carried Gu Yunka over. The young lady was even happier. She stayed in Madame Yang's arms and spoke to Gu Yundong. "Eldest sister, I just waited for a while." "That's true. She even prepared something for you to welcome you home," Aunt Ku added. The little girl immediately became shy and buried her head in Madame Yang's arms like a little quail. Gu Yundong could not help but laugh. She did not get into the carriage and simply walked as she spoke. Along the way, she bumped into the villagers of Yongfu village. Some of them greeted her warmly, but there were also some who pointed at her, as if they did not want to get involved with her. Chapter 383, You Eloped. Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows. After experiencing such treatment for the 3rd time, she could not help but look at Aunt Ku. Aunt Ku snorted. "Ignore them. They're just a bunch of gossipy old women who have nothing better to do." Gu Yundong found it funny. She was already gone. How could there still be her gossips in this village? What's going on? Aunt Ku originally wanted to tell her when they got home. But since she had asked, she did not hide it from her. "I wonder who spread the news that you eloped with Xiao Qingyuan." "Huh? Elope?" Gu Yundong's mind was filled with question marks. She could not help but turn to look at Xiao Qingyuan. Then, she remembered that Xiao Qingyuan had been pulled away by Qin Wenzheng before leaving the restaurant. He said that he had something to tell him. She didn't know what Qin Wenzheng was up to, and why he was being so mysterious. Aunt Ku sneered. "You had already been away from the village for 2 months before Xiao Qingyuan left. How can he get involved with you? Besides, why do the 2 of you have to elope? You have a house, land, and family here. If you want to be together, you can find someone to propose marriage, and no one will object." Is there a need to elope? Gu Yundong felt that what Aunt Ku said made sense. Perfect. I reckon he'll come to the house to propose a marriage in a few days after he goes back. Aunt Ku suddenly paused and looked at her in disbelief. Are you serious? He convinced you just like that? You agreed. You're too unreserved. I've been reserved. It was 15 minutes. Aunt Ku faked a smile and looked at her as if she expected better from her. Although she knew that with Xiao Qingyuan's attitude, Gu Yundong would definitely not be able to escape from him, but she should at least struggle for a year or two. She had really overestimated her. She had given herself away after going out for a while. Aunt Ku was a little heartbroken, but when it came to serious matters, she still frowned. Marriage proposal at this time? I'm afraid the rumors will become more and more intense. Let them say what they want. Anyway, my workshop is going to recruit people again. Whoever talks behind our backs can forget about coming in. I won't indulge them. Most people in Yongfu village were still friendly, but no matter where, there would always be some idle and talkative people who insisted on coming out to make their presence known. Aunt Ku smiled. That's true. Don't worry, I've already memorized all the people who badmouthed you. I'll tell you later. Gu Yundong looked at her and smiled. There was no need to say anything. Tong Shuitao, who had heard everything from the beginning to the end, could not help but feel a little excited. Miss was indeed that Mississippi. She bore grudges. Now that she knew the reason, Gu Yundong no longer paid attention to those strange gazes. The group of people walked majestically towards the foot of the mountain. Gu Yundong realized that there had been a lot of changes along the way. At the very least, some of the villagers' appearances were very different. There were also a few families whose houses had been renovated or rebuilt. It gave her a momentary illusion that she had not been back for a long time. Aunt Ku explained, the conditions of the few families that work in your workshop have improved. At the very least, they can eat well and dress well when they take back the salary for the past few months. There are also those who work for Feng Danning. Because of your house as a signboard, they have been working non-stop for the past few months. Many people have been looking for them. Look, Feng Danning's family has already built a few more rooms. There are also some small workers under him who have also repaired the house. What Aunt Ku did not say was that when village chief Chen Liang saw that the villagers' lives had improved so much, he was really grateful to Gu Yundong. He smiled every day. Gu Yundong had a smile on her face, and she was also very happy. As they spoke, they arrived at the entrance of the house. However, Gu Yundong suddenly stopped in her tracks and looked at the house in front of her in a daze. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.